To get you started straight away, this course begins by providing you with 9 of the best time management rules that you can apply straight away. Once done, we take a step back and we review how we can improve our time management for the long term. For this, I walk you through the 5 areas that we need to have a look at if we want to improve our time management and perform at our best. So we also have a look at what goes in the way of our time management, and we really have an in-depth look at this and how we can fix that. In this course, I include insights and book recommendations from the top time management experts. I also review some of the top techniques and processes that can really have a drastic effect on your time management skills. I also provide in this course a suggested time management system from start to finish that you can actually start using straight away. This course is targeted to anyone who wants to improve their time management with their work. But most of the techniques can also be applied outside of work. Anyway, that's it for me. I hope you can join us. Welcome to this time management course, and once again, thank you for taking this course. Now, there is only one trick with this course, is you need to actually apply what you read. So hopefully you can apply as many of the things that I mentioned here in this course, and that will make a big difference. So in this course, first of all, we'll see some quick wins. The 9 rules that I picked up, and I call them rules of time management. They are more 9 tips, if you like, that you can apply straight away, so to get us started very quickly. Then I will go through the 5 areas that I believe are critical for us to have a look at with the view of improving our time management. Those include having a look at yourself, your context, and also having a look at maybe using a system. To finish this course, I will have a look at some things that you can do towards the tasks that you don't enjoy doing, and also when you are really too busy. When you've tried it all and you still find that you are too busy, I give you some tips there to be used with caution. But first, let's see if we can have some quick wins. So I've put together 9 rules of time management coming from different sources that you could start using straight away. If you could use 1 or 2 of those in the next day or so and let me know how you go, I think it'll be fantastic. Those are quick wins that you can start applying right now. On top of that, I was bold enough to give each one of those rules a rating. So have a look at that. My rating is more related to the work environment, so let me know what you think. I will talk about planning and organizing, but this tip is so simple that I wanted to share it with you straight away. I mean, just the one simple thing that you can do. Now, tomorrow morning, before you start the day, write down what you want to do during the day, and you will see. I mean, you could even, tonight before going to bed, put a piece of paper and a pen on your breakfast table just to make sure that you don't forget. You know, personally, I prefer the physical notebooks for this, so I use a pen and paper. I like the fact that I don't have to log on somewhere in the morning or to access a device. So for me, this is perfect. So studies have shown that it can increase by 40% your chances of doing this. I agree. You know, there is some type of commitment I found when you write something down, you know, almost as if you have made the promise to someone else. The advantage from a time management point of view is that you do not get sidetracked by things that were not on your list. You have a list, you stick to it. Another advantage is that it removes the items to remember from your head. You do not need to remember it because it is in front of you. You don't have to, during the day, think, oh, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? It's there. And your brain will feel less cluttered with tons of stuff that you need to remember. I will talk about fear a lot during this course. It sounds a bit dramatic, but you'll see that sometimes we disguise fear with other things. We say things like, you know, I'm not comfortable with this, I don't like it, I don't feel like doing this, but there's often fear behind it, although we don't want to admit it. Another advantage when you write down what you do during the day is that when you have a lot of things in your mind, it seems scarier to do than when you actually write them down. You know, and I will be using this principle when I suggest a system, a time management system later on. When there is something that you dread, that you don't look forward to doing. When you write it down, it feels less scary. There's a bit of a dissociation effect here. So I give this 3 stars. This is my own subjective rating. 3 stars of 3 because I really like this tip and it is very simple to implement. So the second concept is a single handling of a task. When you start something, you finish it. So this is simple, but not always practical when you work in a team. But the overall idea is that you need to finish something that you start. So, and this is especially true, let's say, when you work from home where you have a lot of distractions, or when you are doing something that is not that exciting, you always find a reason to do something else. Now, the challenge is that it takes a lot of time to get back to the task, and I've seen a few numbers going from 5 to 20 minutes to get back to the task when you have moved away from it. That's another start for you. 80%, that seems really amazing, right? So when you do everything at once, you don't have this getting back into it time. Single handling of a task, not always feasible, but I would say for tasks taking less than 2 hours maybe, I would highly recommend it. I give it 3 stars. The third concept, planning vs doing. For instance, myself with this online course, you always try to improvise to start with in front of the slides and say, oh yeah, I'm gonna let the tape run and I'm gonna say things on top of it, but it's good because I never ran out of things to say, but the content was not very flowing or interesting. So now I plan for it, not word for word, but I know the exact points I want to say, nothing less or more. So more time in planning, but less time in production after removing the bits that were not that interesting or were a bit out of context. So if you are a developer also, if you are a coder, for instance, I'm sure you know this. You know, when you go straight into coding without doing some design or planning, your code is not going to look good, not easy to read. It will be trials and error. You start with something, after you add something else on top, and you have this. So this is so obvious, plan instead of doing, but you know, it's sometimes we get stressed and we don't think about doing it. Another start for you. Not sure how they calculate that, but it seems a bit extreme. But this is a result of some research. So 10 minutes saved in execution for every minute of planning done. And this is good selling point because I often face resistance on this for my staff. You know, Ben, don't you think I have things to do and you want me to plan on top of this? You want me to do some fluffy planning. I want to do stuff. Another advantage is removes uncertainty, give you a direction, calms you down. So this is a recurring point for me. I often talk about, calming yourself down, remove the stress. As for the first tip above, it also provides clarity. You have a clear vision. It removes the fear of the unknown. It is comforting. So it's a bit like the first point when you have to write things down, but this is a bit longer term. And this is the first point, what do I need to do? And this is more how I will be doing it. See, we've just done one slide, 3 concepts, and we already saved, 80% time in execution. And the other one was how much? 900%, 1 minute plan for 10 minute execution. And we have increased our chances of doing stuff as well. So it's a good start. Let's move to the next one. Another thing that we can do is task batching. So we group all our tasks at once. I think this is also very good. I think we have a tendency sometimes to want to have a bit of variety to our day. So we do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But doing everything at once from a time management point of view, it's very efficient. You are in the same frame of mind, you are in a flow. For instance, if you give phone calls, if you give them all at once, then by the third call, maybe you get a little bit more efficient and you go straight to the point. This is good and also works if you have to work with the same group of people for the same task. So you can block one afternoon when you do the thing all together as a group. For instance, interviewing, you interview them all in one afternoon. At the end of the session, and while everybody is here, you can discuss the candidates and you can make a decision on the spot. The one that you're probably aware of is, read and respond to your emails all at once. Once again, it depends on the job you have, but, just reading your email twice a day, for instance, and you just reply to them all is so efficient instead of having these alerts, these notices coming. Oh, I have a new email, let's have a look at it. Oh, no, I don't want to respond to it now. It's going to take me too long. Block one hour and do it. Same for phone calls, same principle. Now, depending on your job, you might not be able to block calls, but if you can, do it and respond to them all at once. You are in control. You are driving the communication. So all this improves the efficiency greatly. Something else that is often recommended is to keep track of your non-productive activities as they come up. This is an awareness exercise. Sometimes we don't realize how much time is wasted by the simple things until we start actually putting a number in front of it. Your co-workers, for instance, are having one after the other in the morning and catching up, and one arrives at 8, the other one at 8:30, or the other one at 9. Another distraction is the phone, and I think we all know that. It's great to have our personal phones at work, but do we really need to check our emails every 30 minutes? Or even worse, to have an alert on it. But by keeping track of all these, that really gives us a number. We can really assess which activity we need to remove or reduce. There are even some phones now that can let you track how much time you spend on one app, for instance, and it gives you reminders and say, oh, you've been using this app for 30 minutes, and then you can assess and say, well, is that really worth my time? This is a good tip. This is a one-off. You just do it once, and after you are set up. So you add all that up, you realize how much time is wasted during the day, and you plan to avoid them. And for instance, you remove mail apps from your phone. That's something I've done personally. I didn't really need to check my email when I was at work, so I removed the email app. Now, another tip. Everything that takes you less than 2 minutes, do it on the spot. So that removes the double handling of the tasks. So if you put a task on your list and do it after, then you've already handled the task twice. So you're already on the losing end with that one. You put it on the list, after you read your list, after you remove it from your list, after people ask you, have you done it? Oh, not sure. And you check your list. Do it straight away if it's short. What I put there is 2 minutes is just a starting point. It will depend on the job you have. In the system, actually, I have later on, I suggest 10 minutes because I think that would work for me, but check with you if 10 minutes is too long. So for me, this is the greatest of all tips. Do things straight away when they don't take time. It will also make you look and feel efficient. And this is another big one. People are always impressed when you do something that quickly. On the other end of the scale, it can be frustrating, when you know it would take someone only 5 minutes to do something and you really depend on it and you have to wait for days and days and weeks. And every time you go to them, they say, oh, but look, I'm so busy, I have so many things to do. But it would take you only 2 minutes to do it. And then very efficient, you do it, and people say, oh wow, I was impressed. You've done that, I was impressed. So it's good for you, and it's good for the others, and it's good for you in more ways than one. So this one, I give it 3 stars because it's only 3 out of 3, but I really love it, very enthusiastic about that one. Another tip that I have here is do the hard things first, also called eat that frog. So start your day with the most difficult task of the day. Now this is what Brian Tracy calls eat that frog, but it's in reference of the Mark Twain quote below, and I think people usually think Brian Tracy coined that expression, but it's actually Mark Twain when he said, if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. I think it's a good tip, I like it. In the time management system that I'm suggesting later in the course, I replace hard things with things you don't enjoy doing. I think it's more accurate. Because you can have something hard, but if you enjoy doing it, you'll be very happy to do it. So the challenge of this is that if you delay that first task because you find it too hard, then all other tasks after are being delayed. So this is why I would suggest doing it more the Kaizen way, if you like, which means splitting a big task into smaller tasks and then take the easiest of these smaller tasks. But I will explain this in more detail later on. Only 2 out of 3 stars because I think it needs some tweaking. Let's review another tip that is commonly seen in time management literature. The 80-20 principle or the Pareto principle. So this states that usually 20% of what you do accounts for 80% of your productivity or issues. So focus on this 20% and not on the other 80% left. For instance, 20% of your clients bring 80% of your sales. So focus on these 20 clients because they are the one bringing all the money. 20% of your clients account for 80% of your issues. So get rid of those clients. Easy. So that seems quite reasonable. If there is 20%, say, of your clients that bring 80% of your sales, yeah, the other 80% only account for 20%. So why waste your time on this? But does this work for your tasks at work though? I think that once again, this would work only in very specific cases. If you can really check with a matrix, for instance, regarding sales, as per the example above, great. But when we work on something that cannot be that easily calculated, what do you do with this? And the other challenge I have is what do you do with the other 80%? Because once again, the overall philosophy is that it all needs to be done. You cannot say, I'm not working on this because that doesn't count much, so I'm not going to do it. Same as the non-important stuff. So what do? You just don't do it at all? Now, as the one before, I do not fully agree with this one. Maybe because I don't think it's feasible at work. But I thought I would mention it here for to be complete, I suppose, to be thorough. Now, you know what Pareto is. It's also called the 80-20 principle. 1 star at work. I have a question for you. Who do you think has the heaviest workload of those two here? This guy on the left or this woman on the right? The answer is we do not know. Those two could have exactly the same workload, but they would go about it in a very different way. That happened to me in real life. Same job, same skill. One guy looked like this guy on the left, and the other guy looked like this woman on the right. So, based on true events. So just by looking here, you can imagine this. This guy here, let's call him Paul. He's got a cluttered desk, so that we don't need to imagine it. He's doing no planning, he's not organized, he has a busy looking environment, he's multitasking, he's frowning. Is that the cause or the effect? He is stressed and probably fearful as well. Is that the cause or the effect? Anna, on the other hand, she looks organized, planning done, relaxing environment. She will be the type to do one task at a time. She is relaxed, she has no fear. And also she is smiling, and that plays a role also. When you smile, you're more relaxed. So you can see that same skills, same situation, you can handle your stuff very differently. And this is a bit of a challenge at work. I find that those guys, like the guys on the left, usually get all the attention and they make a lot of noise. But people like this woman on the right, they are much more organized, they are not stressed, and they pass a bit under the radar. So this is to show you that how we go about our work plays a huge role in our time management. Let's look at this from a different angle. So let's say you have a full plate and you don't meet your deadlines. So there are many potential reasons why you could be late. The estimate that you were given were wrong to start with. You are not skilled for the job. Things came in a way. There was an issue with the task that you did not expect. There were too many distractions. You spent too much time in meetings. You took your time. You couldn't get started. You tried to do too much of a good job. Or maybe you're just going through a stressful period. So there are so many things that could make you late and stressed. And this is why when we address time management, we need to have a look at the bigger picture. We cannot just say, oh, do bullet journaling, do this system, do that. Time management can be impacted by a lot of different things. We need to take it one level up. We need to have a look at the bigger picture. Let's have a look on how we can do that. So we said before, we need to have a look at the bigger picture. So what is the bigger picture then? So this diagram shows the 5 areas we need to improve, in my view, when we feel we are not on top of our to-do list. And I really suggest that you don't forget any of those. They are all important. To start with, it is good to have a system. And I think this is quite intuitive for most people. People look for a system to manage their current tasks, and away they go. But this is not sufficient for the long term, in my view, because a system for our to-do list is a great start, but there is something missing. The potentials are as important as what we know we have to do. This is how we get stuck. So not only the current to-do list, but also the potential. For instance, let me give you an example. If you know it takes you 30 minutes to drive somewhere, and you leave 30 minutes before, you will be early sometime, right on time some other time, but you will also be late. So this is the law of average. If something comes in a way, you are late. This is bound to happen. 30 minutes is your average. And the system I suggest actually takes care of this. Now, the next part to take into account is our context, others, and your physical and digital environment as well. This plays a big role in our time management, and it pays dividends to optimize those areas. Finally, and most importantly, we need to take ourselves into account. We are talking about long-term here, long-term fixes. Now you can drop a time management system or change it, but if you have made changes in you that promote good time management, you will get benefits regardless for the long term. Now, the overall goal with our time management is to have, first of all, a system to manage our to-do list that is done efficiently, confirmed if necessary to do it, that everything is being scheduled. Takes also into account our potential or things that we might have to do. You know, the unplanned things. We are working with others and they are satisfied, our managers, they are engaged, they're cooperating. The environment, there's no clutter. It's well organized. There's no distraction, and it's also cooperative in a way. It doesn't hinder. And finally, us, in the middle of all this. We want to grow. We're not just here to tick off tasks. We are assertive. We are efficient. We communicate. And if we can, we are in optimal shape. Sleep well, eat well, and the like. So this is the overall big picture, and this course will help you get on top of each one of those areas. Now let's get started, because there's quite a lot to cover. There's something that I thought was quite funny in a way when I was managing people, is that they were telling me all the time that they are very busy. Ben, I'm very busy. But as soon as I were putting a holiday request, it's like they were telling me, oh Ben, I have all this to do, but no problem, I can finish it before I go on holidays. So that they wanted me to approve the holidays, which I was doing anyway. But I think this is a very interesting insight, that the way we look at things can really make a difference. So the fact that they were going on holidays, out of the sudden there were no more problems. They didn't want to tell me, oh, I have all this to do, but I won't be able to complete it. And this also tells us that the you part of time management is critical. It's very important. So there's a bit more work to do in this part than in other parts, but it's long-term and it's really worthwhile. Now let's get started. Put aside your defense mechanism, put aside your ego, and really have a honest look on what you could change to improve your time management. Welcome back. The most important component for me for time management is yourself. If there is one area I would suggest you work on, this would be the one. Because this is the one that is driving all other areas. And also this is the one with which you can have the most long-term gains. We're talking long-term here. Most of our behaviors are driven by fear, so it's worth spending some time working on our fears. And this is what we'll have a look next. We can really improve our time management with this. And in this part, we will review several sections like stress management, perfectionism, and the likes. But if you feel that some categories don't apply to you, I still suggest that you listen to them, because you will get something out of them. And you might find out that you actually belong in one of those categories without really being fully aware of it. So it's really worthwhile. Let's spend a little bit of time discussing fear and the brain functions. I promise it won't be long. So if you are into self-development, you might have noticed there is a lot of talk of the cortex, the amygdala, the thinking brain, the neural pathways and the likes, and the list goes on. So I didn't want you to miss out, so I'm just going to have a brief overview of some of the brain functions. So let's review the parts engaged to give us some background on the topic and help us understand what we can do to be more efficient with our time management. Now there are 4 parts in the brain: the neocortex, the amygdala, the limbic system, and the reptilian part. Here we will focus mainly on those 2 to simplify. Now, although it can be very useful to have an activated amygdala to run away from a danger, for instance, for time management, it is critical that we engage our cortex and disengage our amygdala, because we want to be thinking, planning, have a cool head. We do not want to be in survival mode, in fear. That will not make us productive at all. Remember the guy at the beginning, he really looked scared. So we do not want to be in survival mode and fear. We won't be productive if that's the case. So the good news is when we engage one of those 2, the other one is disengaged. When we engage the neocortex, the amygdala is disengaged. Now this doesn't seem to be relevant, but this is the biggest part on working on you for time management, is to be aware of those fears, to be aware of the moment when you are too stressed to be productive. And we can work on this. And this is the long-term gain, as I was saying. It is for the long term. You could have a system that you could drop, and after you lose interest, and after you move on. But yourself, very useful, but not only for time management, that will impact other areas of your life as well. We will see that blaming others doesn't help. We need to work on ourselves, first and foremost. Now, just to give you some examples of fears that can be related to time management. If you are stressed, you might be afraid of being judged if you are late. You know, when you have all the time in the world, why would you be stressed? When you are a perfectionist, maybe you have this fear of failure. When you keep putting off things, is it because you are afraid of not being able to perform the task properly or to fail? That's it for the introduction. Now let's get started with stress management. Now let's talk about stress management. But before we do, just have a look at this thing here and let me know if you agree. So when we are stressed, we always feel like we have too much work. And when we feel we have too much on, then we feel stressed. When you are stressed, you don't think clearly. And when you don't think clearly, you just imagine that you have more than you have. And you don't plan, you don't organize. So this is what I call the vicious circle of stress and time management. It doesn't sound very interesting, but let's have a look on the diagram. So the starting point is you feel stressed. So what happens when you're stressed is you don't really think clearly. And you really don't want to plan or to act. When you do something, sometimes it has to be redone because you don't think clearly and the likes. And therefore that makes you feel overwhelmed. You really feel overwhelmed, you feel you have too much on. and then you think, oh, I'm going to be late. And then you go back into feeling even more stressed. There are 2 points here where we can interrupt the vicious circle, if you like. 2 entry points. We can work on our stress levels. So that's an entry point. We need to work on our stress. And the other entry point is on the planning here. When we plan, we feel less overwhelmed, and then the feeling of being late will be less present, if you like. So this is something that I would never tell my staff. Like, it doesn't matter if you're late. It's okay. You have plenty of time. It doesn't matter if you're late. So we never say that as managers. But we understand when things are late, especially when it's communicated properly. So being late is inevitable. It will happen. So this is what we'll be reviewing. How can we, reduce the stress? Maybe I was going to say remove the stress, or I don't know if it's always possible. And also how planning can really help us during this process. Now, before we move on, let me illustrate another point, another way to look at this, if you like. So the situation is that you could have a lot of things on your to-do list, and that stresses you out. So your reasoning is, I'm stressed because I have some urgent stuff on my list. I have a lot of things to do. So I need to finish this, and then I can relax. Then I will not be stressed anymore. You want to move away from your stress, and the way to do that is to finish what you have on your list. I mean, we all fell in that trap, I believe. But the problem is that doesn't solve the problem is that doesn't solve the problem. You will have another thing on your to-do list, you might have other stuff, and then you will be becoming stressed again. So in an ideal world, we disengage ourselves from that initial stress. So instead, you could work on being able to have stuff on your list and not let that stress you. So easier said than done, but we'll see how we can do that, maybe some starting points for you. And then you'll be able to reason this way. You'll be able to say, well, I have urgent stuff on my list, so I'm going to commit to it, but that doesn't stress me out. I will work as efficiently as I can on this urgent stuff. And there is no specific outcome, because we'll see that we are usually stressed when we fear the outcome also. What would happen if I'm late? If you manage to remove some of the stress at least, there is no specific survival outcome that you need. You're just working on your tasks. You're not chasing your tail. You're not always trying to finish it up so you can relax. So I can hear your comments. Maybe some of you say, well, Ben, that's fine. If you knew my boss, I need to finish this, otherwise I'll be in trouble. But we need to address this. This is not really a way to work for you. If you are always under the constant fear of your manager, this is not very healthy. I mean, this is probably beyond the scope of this course, but this is something that you will need to address. And I'll have some starting point, if you want, for you on this. As long as you do your best work and you communicate, then you're squeaky clean, in my view. Now let's move on and see if we can start addressing that stress. Welcome back to the course. What we can do now is try and identify the origin of our stress. So we can ask ourselves those questions. So can it be related to a poor time management system? Ask yourself if there is a fear behind the stress. Now, we talked about fear before. I know it's a strong word. So what do you think will happen if you are late on your task? Is it a reasonable fear? Do you think that you will not be respected? Do you think that your boss will think you're not good enough? Do you think that you will lose your job? Sometimes when we break down our thought, we realize, yeah, this is the fear that I have. So as a manager, yes, I did respect more people who would actually communicate, tell me in advance, Ben, I'm going to be late. I'd rather give you some notice, I will probably be late. Instead of the guys, maybe work a bit more, try to deliver on time, work late, but at the end of the day, they are late. So now you write down those thoughts and those beliefs, and we will try and address them when we go to the CBT part of this course a little bit later on. Now, some quick notes, just a bit to summarize a bit of the bottom line here for stress is you will always have stuff on your to-do list. It doesn't matter how hard you work, how stressed you get about those tasks, you will always have stuff on your to-do list. And you will surely be late at times on tasks. You know, you have a deadline, you're bound to be late from time to time. This is fine. You need to accept it. So you will be late because you cannot always control others. The environment, your task list, there are too many things out of your control. Do you have a good level of skill? Do you have, the things that you need to complete that task? You're going to have issues, delays, as we've seen at the beginning of this course. So you cannot control it all. So you will be late at times. Is it worth spending some time to try and reduce the impact your to-do list has on you? So you know you're going to have to live with it. So maybe it's worth spending some time on your stress and then the impact that this list has on you. You can be very professional and be late on tasks. It's not a reflection on you if you're late on tasks. I've said it already a couple of times, so very briefly, as long as you communicate properly and you do your best, then you are fine. Now, welcome back to the course. Just briefly, I just wanted to have a chat about the life balance. You have a pie chart here that shows you the areas of your life. So how you go in one area will impact the other area. The purpose, if you like, is to have all areas well balanced. If you want to improve your time management at work and your stress management, you also need to have a look at other areas of your life. Last century, there was a culture of working hard, 6-7 days a week, pushing as much as possible to get the best results. But since then, it's been demonstrated that working the longer is not always the best. It's not always what brings the best results. If you have a quick look at this, there is an Excel attached. You can rate each area of your life. And then that will give you an idea if maybe an area needs a little bit more attention. If you spend too much time on your career and work, then you could spend a little bit more time maybe in the area that is lacking time. So it's just a thought. I just wanted to put it out there for you. If you are so inclined, have a look at that. Now let's move on to the other part. Welcome back to the course. Now this is not a course on stress management, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that there are other means to try and reduce your stress other than just going through your task list, your to-do list. Because this is really a never-ending process. You feel stressed, or in order for me to get rid of my stress, I need to go through my task list. Try and address your stress by other means. I have here two categories, the short-term fixes and the long-term fixes. The first one, cardiac coherence, could actually be quite long-term if you do it regularly. And this book from on the heart coherence that I have there on the left is advocating that you should be doing this 3 times a day. So it's called cardiac coherence. You might have heard of it. How it works is you breathe in for 5 seconds and you breathe out for 5 seconds. And you do this for 3 to 5 10 minutes in a row. So this is good for me. I have to say that this is my go-to thing when I need to relax on the short term. When I find I'm not very grounded, and I use that on holiday sometimes, when I am a little bit overexcited, I just need to ground myself, and be mindful. So this is something that I found very useful. If you want to try it, I strongly suggest it. Another thing, obviously, is mindfulness, being present with your task. And that's the advantage of Pomodoro, because as the amount of time is quite short, then you can really focus on your task for 20 minutes, 25 minutes even. So mindfulness means being fully concentrated on your work here. Another thing that you can do is just smile. It works. It sounds silly, but smiling sends a message of calm and being in control to your brain. So when you are smiling, for instance, we have a look at that photo again here of that lady. She oozes peace. On the other page, we'll see some affirmations that can be done as well. Now, the longer term fixes, I think we all know them more or less. There's yoga, meditation, or something like this. This is extremely useful. A good sleep and healthy food, yes, that plays a role in time management and stress. Implementing a sound time management principle. So this could work if you are really disorganized and you bring some order in your task list. You don't get overwhelmed by that. That will play a big role in reducing your stress. We talked about reviewing your life balance as well. There's something else, finally, is to challenge your irrational beliefs or your thoughts. The first step, obviously, is to try and ding them out, because sometimes we just go straight into our emotion and we don't really have a look at what is the thought or the belief that is behind it. And I will refer you back to the CBT section on this. So that's it. Now let's have a look at the affirmations. Now we have a look at some affirmations. Now you don't need to believe in them, but if you pick one or two or three, and if you repeat it to yourself, your brain will thank you for it. The first one is, I'm good at time management. I mean, this is strongly suggested. Just say that you are good at time management, because you probably have been telling yourself, oh, I'm crap at time management, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. Start with this. The other one is, right now there's only one task that needs to be done. I might have 10, 20 tasks, but for the moment, only one task. Something else that you can tell yourself if you want to be more assertive and pushing back on tasks and the likes is, my time is as important as anyone else's. You can also tell yourself, it will all be done on time, not a problem. But if I am late, it's not the end of the world. There are worse things that have been happening. You are outcome independent. You don't really care either way. As long as you're putting the effort, then you're fine. That's all you need to do. Put the effort, and then the outcome is really, in a way, it's out of your control. Now, a good job on time is better than a perfect job late. So we'll talk about perfectionism just after, but it's just a bit of a heads up, if you like. A good job now is better than a perfect job tomorrow. That wraps things up for the stress management. So if you fall in a perfectionist category, if you see yourself as a perfectionist, I think you will enjoy the next part of the course. Until then, see you soon. Let's have a chat on perfectionism. Perfectionism, in my view, is not really a quality. Sometimes I hear people saying they are perfectionists while thinking it is a quality. But behind perfectionism, there is the anxiety of never being satisfied with the quality of your work and thinking you always need to do more. So perfectionism is the anxiety of never being satisfied with your work. A much better quality, in my view, is knowing when to stop. This requires us to make a decision to stop before too much time is wasted. I mean, quality is subjective anyway. What we think is great might not please others, and vice versa. So more time spent on a task does not always translate into the work being of better quality. So if we were to draw that on a chart, now we have the time spent on one axis and we have the quality on the other axis. To start with, the more time we spend, the better the quality, obviously, because we're starting from scratch. So there is some good progress to start with. There's a steady going up, not a problem. Then we reach the law of diminishing returns. And in fact, quality can suffer by putting too much work on it. It can look disjointed, there is a lack of flow and spontaneity, it can look really overcooked. So, having said that, when do we decide to stop working on our task? We have two main ways, I believe. The first one is we make a subjective assessment of the quality of the work that we have done. And this is where perfectionists probably struggle, because they never think it is good enough in their view. The other option is we estimate how much time is reasonable for us to spend on that task, and then we stick to it. And this is obviously more suitable for perfectionists, so that might hurt them a little bit more, but this is a safeguard, if you like. So obviously sometimes a decision made for us on how much time we should spend on the task. And it is good. I mean, and we need this type of time frames around us to avoid that perfectionist problem. So to illustrate, we can check the Parkinson's law below. The amount of time one has to complete the task is equal to the amount of time it will take to complete a task. So think about that one. You are given half a day to do a task. It will take you half a day. You are given 5 days to do a task. It will take you 5 days. Obviously, if we ask you to do something in half a day, we expect a lower quality than if you had 5 days. But what Parkinson's law means is that we always fill up the time. And this is why our managers, our clients always put us on the time frame. So we have a limited time, and it's good for us in a way. Now, this is one way that we can quote unquote fix the perfectionism. Obviously, it's always better to fix the long-term issue that we have with being a perfectionist. And we'll touch on that later on. But as a short-term fix, estimate, time frames, stop. Imagine you are sitting at an exam. You have 2 hours to do it. After 2 hours, are you going to say, oh, sorry, I need more time to finish this? Nope. Now let's have a look at a couple of quotes now. Now let's see if the artists agree with us. A little trivia for you. Who said, have no fear of perfection, you will never reach it? Give you a hint. Salvatore Dali. Well done if you found it. Another quote, excellence does not require perfection. He comes on his bike. Henry James. Think about that. Perfection doesn't exist. And that's one of the principles to beat perfectionism, is that you are stating that nothing is perfect. And we'll touch on this later on as well. And also the other quote is that excellence doesn't require perfection. And what does that mean anyway? It's very subjective. Now we have seen that quality is subjective sometimes. But what if the quality is not subjective? And we can actually measure it. So when do we stop? Let's have a look at an example, for instance. You're one of the big companies, Apple, Samsung, and you're working on the quality of the battery in the phone. So when are you going to stop improving on the quality of the battery? So you can release your phone. When the battery is perfect and never runs out, so a battery for life. Because it's tempting, because look at this chart, okay? Same as before, the difference is we can actually measure the quality, so we're improving all the time. So we are just going, we're going, and then we're going up again, because every time we find ways to improve, because we can actually measure it. So that makes a big difference when you can measure it. So the battery life could be 8 hours and 1 minute, and after 8 hours and 2 minutes. Then you could argue the perfectionist would keep going until the forever, because it's still improving, so why stop? So what do the Apples and Samsungs of this world do then? Do they wait for the perfect battery? Of course not. Or else their phones would still look like this one, and they will never get the job done, never release any phone. So what they do is, and we know that, they release a phone every year. They draw a line in the sand, and they say at this point in time, we take the battery as it is. And we'll be as good as possible, of course, we'll do our best, but we cannot wait forever, we need to sell new phones, and that's it. So the key solution for perfectionism, in my view, is to have everything time-based and find a way to make you stick to it. And I've given the example of an exam, after 2 hours, that's it. It will never be perfect, your stuff. Either you cannot measure it, or if you can measure it, you could go on forever. Now try this for perfectionism. The first thing you can try is to set a timer for when you need to stop. Say, okay, I'm going to do this, and in 1 hour, like sitting at an exam, in 1 hour I will, drop tools. And we'll see a system called Pomodoro. So if you give yourself 1 hour, around 50 minutes, obviously, you know it's time to review. So you'll start to wrap up. You're not going to just work and after stop at 1 hour without looking at the clock. So that will force you to do some planning, and then you stop. And in conjunction with this, you set a time frame for all your work, even when you are not given one. And this is difficult. This is why we all struggle more to work on our own than with managers sometimes. We struggle more to deliver when we work on our own. Because when your boss tells you this has to be done by Friday, then usually you do it by Friday. But when it's yourself, you just usually don't have these time frames. And if you have them, you don't have the same quote-unquote motivation. So the short-term solution for me is to stick to time frames. Now, long-term solution. Work with your anxiety around never thinking your work is good enough. The quality of your work is never good enough for you. Analyze your fears of failure or your fears of being judged for your work. You need to analyze this, and we'll find ways to do this. See yourself as not perfect, because you are human and no human is perfect. So this is the work of Albert Ellis that we'll see on the next slide. Is very useful for this. It's a little bit in your face, we'll see, but I think this is a very good approach to perfection. See yourself as not perfect. Provide yourselves example that nothing is really perfect in this world, that all humans are fallible. Another thing, and it's a little bit similar, and we'll talk about this also on the next slide, is challenge your distorted thoughts that cause your anxiety and that cause you not wanting to stop. And to do that, there's a tool, it's called CBT, Cognitive Behavior Therapy, and you use this to challenge your reasoning. And we'll see that as the next slide as well. So let's have a look at those two, Albert Ellis and CBT. Welcome back to this course. Welcome back to the perfectionism part of this course. Apologies if you don't like acronyms, but I have two for you here, REBT and CBT. So let's have a look at those. Those two are modalities that then can be very useful to challenge our irrational beliefs about work. So REBT stands for Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. It's been created by a guy called Albert Ellis. I've read somewhere that he's been voted the second most influential psychiatrist, psychologist, can't really remember, with Freud. So that's a reference for you. So he has quite a direct approach, as I was mentioning before. So writing a summary on just one sentence like that might be a little bit unfair, but I had a go at it, and especially within the context of perfectionism, if you like. So we have unrealistic expectations, and we are depressed when they are not met. So expectations can be about ourselves, can be about others, and can be about the environment. So the solution that he has is we need to confront those beliefs and those expectations. So I recommend any of those books. They're always more or less the same, but have a look at those books. Some of his work that I have here, Perfection Doesn't Exist. When we get anxious or anything, we realize there is nothing really perfect in this world. There is always a flaw somewhere. The demands to be perfect are hard to overcome. We have to change our thinking. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say I want to go to the shops. So the car park is full, so I need to go and park quite far, and I have to walk. And I'm here on my way, and I say, oh my God, this is my luck. The car park is full, and I go into a bit of a rant like this. Can I do something about this? And I'm like, so if I analyze my thinking there, I think that everything should be perfect. I should be arriving at the car park, there should be a spot for me, and I should be able to buy the milk, come back home, not a problem, 5 minutes. But is that a realistic expectation that I will always find a place to park, that there will be no line at the shops and the like? So we always think that everything's going to be perfect. We always think that our friends should always be available for us, that our friends should be supportive, that someone should return your email or your phone call straight away, and if they don't, then they are you're feeling a little bit anxious. So it's not realistic, and this body of work is really helping us to uncover those beliefs that we have, and encourages us to really challenge this. The world is not perfect. So this is a little bit in your face, but it's something that I think is very useful. Now the other acronym is CBT. It's much more popular, so I'm sure you've heard of it. Cognitive Behavior Therapy. So it's called a therapy, but you don't have to go through a therapy to use it. So the summary is what causes our suffering is our thoughts and beliefs, not actual events. We'll see that it might make more sense when I show you a little bit of a diagram of this. So it's not really what happens, it's what we think about what happens that causes us to be stressed. So the solution is simple, just challenge your thoughts and beliefs. So that seems to be easy. But the challenge is that we are not aware of those thoughts sometimes. And this is why it's a two-step process in a way. You first have to identify those thoughts, and after you have to challenge them. So reading recommendation, it's not a very recent book, but I really like this book from David Burns. I think to start with, it was a book on depression, but it has it all in there. He has all the principles and the likes. But if you pick up any book on CBT, they would go through more or less the same process. So I think I would suggest David Burns as a starting point, and then you can branch out if you like. And you can use those, obviously this is a part on perfectionism, but you can use those processes, REBT and CBT, for also procrastination, and then for stress. Now before we get moving, there is another book that I cannot really recommend because I have to admit I haven't read it, but I've noticed that it came out. It's a CBT for perfectionism, and there is also a workbook on it. So that seems very interesting. It might be worth, if you end up reading it or using it, please let me know. I'll be very interested, and I can provide some feedback in this course as well. Welcome back to the course. REBT and CBT, the acronyms. Now, I'm just going to show one diagram that illustrates both, I think. Roughly, they have a slightly different approach, but I think that'll be good enough. So we have an activating event that causes our stress or our negative emotion. Now, there is something between the event and our emotion or maladaptive behavior that we need to uncover first. We are not fully aware of it. So we ask ourselves this question: why do I actually appear to believe at this point here, just before I experience my consequences? Let's see. They call it ABC. A for activating event, B for belief, and C for consequence. So first step to uncover what is this belief. And we'll give an example later if it doesn't make fully sense to you now. So we need to replace this with that. You still have the activating event, but your belief is more rational. You've challenged it, and you come with something more reasonable, more normal. And then the consequence, you might still have a negative emotion, but it will be more functional, and your behavior will be more adaptive. Now, how do we challenge those beliefs? The first question to ask yourself is, am I 100% sure that it's true? Because sometimes when you discover the belief and you really put it in front of you, you realize, oh, this is really an unrealistic expectation. So now let's review how we can challenge those beliefs. Welcome back to REBT and CBT. How can we challenge those distortions here? So CBT is suggesting 10 types of distortions we can have, and REBT has just some of those, but it's more or less all the same, I believe. Now, there are 10 of those. I have provided a link in a resource where you can go and check it in more detail. But if you go on the internet and Google for a CBT distortion or thought distortions, and you will find them as well. I'm just going to go through them quickly here. This is just a subtract of the link of what is in the link that I have put in the resource. So one of the distortion is all or nothing thinking, for instance. If you get 80% on the test, you feel like a failure. You can jump to conclusion as well. That could be fortune telling or mind reading, as they put it. You can overgeneralize. If you fail to get a job you interview for, you decide you are never going to get a job. You're not good enough. You can magnify or minimize, catastrophize even. This happens a lot and causes so much stress. And I think especially at work, the type of magnifying or catastrophization that we can do is just think, I'm gonna lose my job. If I don't do this properly, I'll lose my job. There's a lot of fear at work, I suppose. So mental filter, that's another one. Focus exclusive on the most negative. You just don't see the full situation, you just see some parts of it. Let's go to the next one. You disqualify the positive. That's a little bit like mental filtering. And we tend to remember more when we are given poor feedback than when we are given good feedback. Personalization, that one is to look out for when challenging thoughts on perfectionism. It's not all about you. It is just a job. We always assume responsibility. Shoot and out, and this is so common as well. I should do a perfect job every time. We have unrealistic expectation. This should always be here. I should always have a spot on my car park. My boss should always give me sufficient notice. My colleagues should always give me the work on time. This is even, idealistic. Emotional reasoning. Now, if I feel guilty for being late, then it must be true, and that should not be late. You feel that the emotion that you feel is genuine, but we are so often misled by this stuff. Have a read on the explanation on emotional reasoning. I feel it, therefore it must be true. And this is something that really needs to be challenged. And labeling that can be good for perfectionists, for procrastination, for stress. I'm a loser, I'm so stupid. Instead of, I made a mistake as I had a busy day. Like for time management, I am terrible at time management. Think about some times when you have been doing a great job. Think about some time when you managed to do a lot of stuff in a short amount of time and you were in a flow. So I'm sure part of you is good at time management, so we need to resurrect that part. So this is it. So those are the 10 type of distortions that we can have when we think. So I didn't want to spend too much time on this because this is obviously not a course on CBT. But I think if you are into it, if you are interested, I really suggest that you have a look at those 10 at the link I gave you. But sometimes just challenging your thought. If you think, oh, this is too overwhelming, just challenge your thought, try and dig them out. Why am I stressed? Why do I want this to be so perfect? What is the reason behind? What is your belief? And then you challenge it. Let's give an example just on the next slide. Now let's have a look at a couple of examples. If I don't do this right, I will not be respected by my manager and my team. So there are some few distortions here. As an exercise, you could have a look at the distortions of these. So you could replace that thought, that belief with, it would be ideal if I could do it right, of course. However, if there's something not quite right, then, that will not influence my manager or my team view on me. Done some good work in the past, we are not perfect, and then that will be it. I'll have a discussion with them. Maybe if I didn't do it right, I didn't have all the tools I needed, all the skills I needed. And that's it. And then you do your work in a much better frame of mind. Now, another one, find a distortion. I should always give the best report, or else my boss will think I have lost interest and I will get fired eventually. Now, once again, this doesn't have to be conscious. So what would be a better thought there? You could uncover that thought, and then you could say instead, there are always corrections on the report. The quality on those reports is quite subjective. My boss might have some amendments to make, but it would be mostly due to his own personal preferences. And that will not be a reflection on me. So that's it for perfectionism. Let's have a look at the procrastination work. Welcome back to the course. Let's have a look at procrastination. Perfectionism. Our challenge is we cannot stop. Now, procrastination, we cannot start. We delay things. So what are the main reasons for procrastination? Although we disguise it by saying things like, I don't like this, I don't feel like doing this is so boring. There is often a fear involved when we postpone doing something. Sometimes we just freeze when we're afraid of doing something. The fear is preventing us from moving forward. The fear of failure is quite common amongst people who tend to procrastinate. They feel they will not be able to complete the job, and they freeze. Sometimes, rightly or not, they feel they do not have the proper skills. Being a perfectionist is also common as a reason to procrastinate, because they don't think that they'll be able to do a great job. So if you feel the need to do that thing to perfection, it is very daunting. Imagine you are the Olympics, for instance, and you've been working on that race, you've been training for 4 years, and you're just about to do the race. That's it, the time has come. It's very daunting, isn't it, when you know you have to do it perfectly. So there is this pressure of doing it perfectly, so you don't want to start, you want to postpone it, you think, I can prepare a bit more. So you don't want to start. Something a little bit more obvious maybe is the lack of energy can also be a factor. When you are full of energy, sometimes you just will do anything, right? Another reason why we can be procrastinating is we rely too much on willpower. Neuroscientists are telling us that we only have 15 minutes. Once again, I don't know how they calculated that, but we only have a limited amount of self-control during the day, of willpower. Use it well and don't rely on it. Let's have a look at a couple of solutions. Welcome back to the course Procrastination. Let's have a look at some potential solutions for you. The first solution I suggest is for you to have a look at this book called 5-Second Rule, and we'll have a slide later on this. But it's more or less the rule where you count down from 5 to 0, and when 0 comes, you start work straight away. So I have a slide on this, so we'll come back to it. It's not very complex, but still. Brian Tracy is one of the time management gurus. So what he's suggesting is, when you don't feel like doing something, just repeat to yourself, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now. The advantage of this tip is, I would say, is just try it. Try and see if it works. Another thing that I really like is to work on affirmation that gives you a different perspective on things. So for instance, what you could tell yourself is, every day I find it easier and easier to start and get things done. This is not as bad as I think it is. Once I get started, it's all downhill. And you can find your own affirmations. Just try and find affirmation that you don't really believe in yet. Like, this is easy, this is fine, I can do it. Another thing that we have on this course as well, it's the CBT, so that's also a very good one. Identify the thoughts or the beliefs that are stopping you from starting. As I have several videos on this, then I will refer you back to those if you really want to get into this. But this is more the type of things that will keep you going for the long term. It's more a long-term fix, so I like it. Now, we've seen another reason that people are procrastinating, and it seems a bit counterintuitive, is because they are perfectionists. So if you feel that you're a perfectionist, maybe you should do some work on this. And I have something also in this course on this. Now let's review some other things we can try to manage procrastination. One other thing is to work on your habits. So have a look at your habits. You could start the habit to do the work with another habit. So I refer you to the book Atomic Habits on this. If you want to have a look at it, on my slide first, and after you feel so inclined, you want to buy it maybe, but it's just giving you a summary of all the things we can do around our habit. I think this is quite a good book, but you don't have to buy it, obviously. Another thing to try is Kaizen. I also have a part on this somewhere else in the course, but what we are doing with Kaizen is to break down all the large block of work into smaller blocks. And what that does here is that disengage the amygdala, the fear. When something looks big, it's scary. to do. But if you take just one very small part, it's not scary. So you engage your cortex and you are up for it. So it's a good way to disengage the fear, and it's really worth trying. So this is referred to as a Kaizen method, but even without using this word Kaizen, it's something that is quite intuitive and I'm sure existed before we used the word Kaizen for this. So we start small. So more on this later when we talk about how to do things that we don't enjoy doing. Actually, procrastination is usually for things that we don't enjoy doing or things that we are afraid of. Now we talked about this. One of the reasons we procrastinate sometimes is we have low energy levels, so it's really worth working on your energy level. So you might know that already, but work on your sleep, on your diet, on your lifestyle. Spend more time on this if you feel the energy level is your problem. So if you're full of energy and you still don't want to start your thing, then you can forget about this. But usually when we are full of energy, we're more inclined to do some work. And review your goals. Goals are a good way to get you motivated to start something, to embed your personal goal into the work that you have to do. That's something that I mentioned in my system later on. I find it very important for you to have a look at your personal goals, even when you are at work. That will get you motivated. You embed that within your work goals, and then that will make it easier because you know that you have a personal goal that you are reaching towards. So I'll talk about this, as I was saying, in my time management system that I put there, but also on the next slide. Now we talk about goals before, and review your personal goals to get you motivated. Now I have actually a free course where I talk about goal setting. The overall philosophy is that you shouldn't push yourself to do something. Remember this willpower thing that I mentioned at the beginning, it's always limited. So we cannot rely on willpower too much. We don't want to push ourselves too much, so we pull ourselves. This is what we need to do. We need to pull ourselves. So it's much easier. And what I suggest in this short course is that every day do those things there on the right to get you started for the day. The first 30 seconds, you imagine yourself with your goal met. You have a personal goal, you imagine this is met. What will you be doing? How will you be feeling? And the likes. The next 30 seconds, you review the progress. You review what you have done. This is so powerful. You look back, even if it's something very small, you review and you say, oh, I'm on my way. This is good. The next 30 seconds is you decide on a very small next step. So this is optional if you are on your way, if you are progressing. But it's always good to have a small step to do the Kaizen once again. Because this way, when you finish this, you can jump on it straight away. Now, the way I have this last step here is gratitude. This is more related to personal goals that are not always work related. But that could work also for work. The gratitude, what I mean is when we have personal goals, sometimes is that we are so focused on this goal that we tend not to remember, not to think about what we already have. We don't want to be 100% focused on this goal. So the gratitude is enjoy what you have now. I don't need to have this goal met to start enjoying life. And for work, it could be the same. Let's say you are at work. Your personal goal is to start your own business, but you are still at work. In the meantime, just be, grateful that you actually have a job. Even if you procrastinate on your tasks, you have a job at least that allows you to, go shopping, to do everything that you want to do, to go for a cup of coffee or something small like this. But this way that disengage you a bit so you're not obsessed with your goal. So this closes more or less procrastination, but I still have another slide on the Mel Robbins 5-second rule. Let's jump into this now. Now, the last thing on procrastination, I suggested we could have a look at Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule. No, I'm not saying that you should buy this book, not at all, and review my talk on books at the beginning of this course. But it's just an overall idea that is worth considering. Maybe if you just want to know more, you could just Google it, and I'm sure you'll find plenty of information without having to buy the book. Now let me give you the general idea. The general idea is our brain can kill our ideas or our actions. So when you think about something too much, then there's a bit of analysis paralysis, and it's it's not always positive what our brain is telling us all the time. So the way I see it, it's like you have a friend that is very negative, and every time you want to do something, or every time you say something, you say, "Are you sure? Oh, but it could be problems. Shall we plan more on this? Are you sure we can do it now?" So for me, that's the 5 to 0 countdown that Mel suggests. Is a way to more or less ask this quote-unquote friend to shut up. So the process is very simple. So you count down from 5 to 0. And she says it's quite important to go from 5 to 0 because we always associate 0 with action. So you say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, go. And then you start moving. And you start moving physically when you start counting. At 5, you're already in motion. So if you have to do something, well, you start at 5, 4, 3. That means you start maybe starting your email if it's an email that you need to write. Start your report if it's that you need to do. So the overall idea is to act as soon as we get an impulse. Something that I agree with her, and I've already mentioned that a couple of times, is Mel doesn't believe in motivation. And she said that you do not need to get motivated to act. You just need to have this impulse. Now, not fully related, she has an example on the reframing that I thought it might be useful for you. When we get anxious, we see it instead as being excited. Try to trick your mind. You tell yourself, I'm excited, I'm excited. You fake it until you actually believe it. And the way she put it, it provides a plausible explanation to your brain. So you feel anxious and you're telling your brain, no, that's not being anxious. I'm just being excited. What are you talking about? So this is something that you can use as well. Now this closes procrastination. And I'm thankful because I find it very hard to pronounce. Welcome to the short but very powerful section on habits. Our habits impact our time management. So let's see how we can use that to our advantage. Let's see first what we call habit stacking. Sometimes we do things without realizing. There is an expression for it. We call it force of habit. And this is often because we have a series of habits that make you do one thing after the other, without even thinking. Neuroscience would put that differently. They would say we have built some neural pathways and they are well trained and they are the ones making us to do one thing after the other. It doesn't really matter why at the end of the day. But what matters is it does happen. You do one thing, and after you do another thing without even thinking about it. So our goal is to make sure we do not have too many non-productive habits stacked, which means being done at the same time of an existing habit, or just after an existing habit. Now, how does this work? Surely you have habits already, even at work. So what you do is you bring a new productive habit after an existing habit. Or even, if possible, at the same time. Let's be careful here. We're not talking about multitasking. We're talking about doing two things that can be done at the same time. For instance, when you drive, you can listen to an audio. There is no conflict between those two activities, between those two habits. So after an existing habit, at the same time, as opposed to a reward, which is providing usually after, I'll have this reward if I do this job. I'm not really into this. But if you're currently doing this and it works for you, by all means, go for it. So let me give you a couple of examples. For instance, without naming anyone, some of us have the habit to, once they arrive at work, they turn on their laptops, and as soon as they're logged in, the first thing they do is they go to their favorite website. Be a sports website or anything else, even the news. Now, this is obviously not a productive habit stacking. Your login leads you to the news website, for instance. What we need to achieve is to have as many productive habits stacked on top of existing habits. So we use our current daily rituals as a launching pad for productive habits. Let's see another example. Let's say you have a coffee every morning. You could be wondering, how can I couple that with another habit? So you have several options. The first one, you could just be browsing the internet, what I call mindless browsing. Or you could see this as a trigger to start to work. I would go for that one. Or you could pile that up on top of other things that you're doing. So you could be doing some type of multitasking, if you like. This is just an example. If your existing habit is to have a cup of coffee, that's an opportunity for you to couple that with something productive. Now let's have a look at other types of things that we can do with our habit as well. A couple of other things about habits. I took that from James Clear's book, but once again, apology, James, if you're taking this training. But I don't think he invented anything. I think he just took all the good habits systems and just put them in one book. And what he did well, also, he actually presented habits in a different light, a different way. So what he's suggesting is to remove cues to non-productive habits and create cues to productive habits. So cues are what make the habit visible and easier to get into. For instance, when you see your phone on a table, you are more likely to pick it up. For me, I see my phone, I need to check. So that's why I'm trying to remove it as much as I can. So if you have only one file on your desk, the one for your next job, you are more likely to do it next instead of being sidetracked. So if you have only one file on your desk, instead of having tens and dozens of files, you are most likely to work on that next. So this is like a productive habit cue, if you like, as opposed to the phone, which is a non-productive habit cue. Another thing that Mr. Clear suggests, make your task more challenging. It's not really a habit, but you're most likely to keep with a habit if it's a little bit more challenging. For instance, if you usually do something in 1 hour, you could try and do it in 55 minutes with the same quality, of course. So it just to make it a little bit more interesting. So therefore, if it's more challenging, you're more likely to keep this as a habit. Now quickly, just an example on how I was applying those methods, sometimes without even realizing. So if we see 3 types of habits, the neutral habits, I would call them, which is, like for instance, eating or drinking a cup of coffee, productive habits and non-productive habits. From my breakfast on, I have a series of habits. Now, when I have my breakfast, at the same time, I do a mindless browsing. So this is a good example of a non-productive habit that I have with my breakfast. And this is next on my list of things to change. That has to change. But as soon as I finish breakfast, I do some self-development. I have a notebook on the table as a cue for me to do some journaling or just do some reflection or the like, so some practice. As soon as this is finished, I do some exercise. After I go for a walk. When I have my coffee, I start work at the same time. So this is more or less my morning. There's one after the other. And as soon as one is out of work for any reason, let's say I need to go somewhere and I don't do my exercise and I say, I'll do it later. And you can be sure that more often than not, I don't do it. This works well because every morning I don't have to think. I just go through the motion. I have some cues, which is a notebook on the table as a cue. I have some productive habits that I've put after existing habits, which are those ones. I have a productive habit at the same time as an existing one. And I'm trying to do a task more challenging every time, like the exercise. I don't do always the same thing. So for me, that works. For instance, my habit number 2 here was breakfast plus mindless browsing, and after I was sitting on the sofa and I was doing more mindless browsing, and then I was going into my exercise, walk, and the likes. But I've changed that. I've really made it visible that I wanted to do something else after breakfast, and it worked. And now I'm very happy because I still do some mindless browsing, not as much, but that's next on my list. So it is, just to give you an example, it's not completely work related, but I think that gives you a good example on how you could implement it. I will also give you a link to a site where they explain very well habit stacking. Actually, they are fully dedicated on habit stacking, so it's probably worth a visit. That's all for habits. Now in this part, I'm having a look at the context for time management, which is others and your environment itself. Now the good thing about this part is it's quite quick to implement sometimes, and it's just a one-off. You don't have to rework it. Once you made some decisions, you implement them and off you go. So have a look at this, make your adjustments. I've seen so many people sometimes just say, oh, that's a great idea, but after I come back to them and they say they haven't implemented it. So please implement some of this stuff and you'll see the difference. Now, if you want to improve your time management, you need to make some tough decisions sometimes. You need to have some difficult conversations. You need to be assertive towards others and also set boundaries. And that includes your manager as well. So the first thing to do is to have a look at who is impacting your time. Who is impacting your time management? Are you sitting next to someone who takes up too much of your time, maybe with chatting? What can you do about it? Communicate, let people know what you are doing when you need to focus on a task. You know, when you're on Skype or one of those systems, you can put a do not disturb and people get the message and they don't interact with you. But in real life, it's not that easy. So try. So is sitting next to the person you work with the best option? So now with the agile methodology, there was this, we wanted everyone to sit next to each other as soon as they do something together on a job. And this, is my view, has been pushed too far. I remember some manager insisting that as soon as there are two people working on the same project, they need to sit next to each other. So this might be good when there is a lot of interaction required, like every 10 minutes or so. But that's very rarely the case. And those interruptions come at a cost. We will see that it can take a while to come back to a task after being interrupted, so that's quite important. So for that reason, it has been demonstrated that working too close together can be actually detrimental to your productivity. Set boundaries with your coworkers. You need to be assertive with your coworkers. And sometimes it is more difficult than being assertive with your managers because you have built the relationship. They're your friends sometimes. If you have someone who likes to joke around, for instance, sometimes just don't laugh. Or else, if they hear you laughing all the time, they encourage them and they say, well, why would I stop? This guy is still laughing at my joke. So I'm entertaining him or her. So when you have a dependency with others, if you have time frames, for instance, and you need others to complete a certain job at a certain point in time, make sure that the others, and it might not be easy if you're not their managers, but if you're working with someone, a colleague, a peer, you need to let them know that needs to be done by that point in time, otherwise I'm going to waste my time. Not using those words, obviously, but it's very important that they are in line with your dependencies. Let's talk about the favorite topic, meetings and emails. So meetings, when you attend them, be goal-driven. Attend, if at all possible, only when you can learn something from the meeting attendees. And if you do not feel you need to attend, try and negotiate a little bit. There's a lot of meetings out there where it's just people providing updates. Unless you really, really need those updates, my advice, if you can, try not to attend. Challenge the meetings you feel you do not need to attend. Now, if you chair the meeting, and apologies if you have also taken my course on project management where I talk about this, but for me, meetings are about issue resolution and decisions to be made, to formalize stuff. I really don't see the point where everybody gives their update on my project or on anything else when there is no dependency between the tasks and the attendees. So if you need to do some team building, do some team building activities, but do not use meetings for that purpose, because this is something that I've noticed. I say, oh, this way that gives us an opportunity for all of us to come together during the week, but nobody really feels like attending meetings every week just to be as a group, maybe a good team building activity once a month or once every 3 months will do a much better job at that. Another thing that I stress for meetings is try and fix issues on the spot. That is something else that I suggest, but when you have people in a meeting, try and fix issues while everybody is there. Give a phone call even during the meeting. Avoid let's reconvene to talk about this more. This is not good for time management. You manage to get everyone in a room. Nobody goes out until this is fixed, if at all possible. So let's move on to emails now. For emails, the time management trick that is being given is usually to try and batch them together, try and do them all together. And also try and check them only once or twice a day, if at all possible. Obviously, it depends on the job, but this is really a very good time management system. I see people who have the emails popping up all the time when they're working. I mean, how can you concentrate on the task when this happens? Another tip that I thought is really good, especially if you're a manager, is in a subject of your email, put for info, for action, or for approval. So for info, it's just something that is being said that you don't really need to have a look at, only if you're interested in that topic. For action is when you need someone to do something about the email. And for approval, it's for managers or the likes that need to really approve something. So this is usually the most important, the most urgent emails. And I think the rest, you know about it, but do we do it or not? That's another topic. Have automated rules in your email system, Outlook or the likes, to have everything goes neatly into a folder. It's important to have everything organized by folders and by dates, and that will make things much easier to find. Welcome back to the course. Well, as you noticed, I like to recommend books. So that's another one for you. When I was working as an executive in a large bank, one morning I saw this small book on my desk. It's called The 1 Minute Manager. And I think it was a smart move from the bank. I really liked the fact that they were trying to bring up the level, and the fact that the book was very, very small, easy to read, concise. I think that also really, really helped. So this book recommends setting short and concise goals for your employees. And the book also recommends frequent and short praise and criticism. This is also okay, especially the praise part. But for me, the key learning point here was to give a goal that can be described with 250 words or less. So a goal, an activity, a task, when you force yourself to write that very concisely, has a lot of benefits. Some people say, yeah, you can just go to the desk and be very concise, but for me, there's nothing like in writing for this. A short description, it's more work for you, in fact. It's more difficult to write something short, but that has some advantages from a time management point of view as well, when the tasks can be different from one another. Like, for instance, if you always do the same job, can you do 3 of this, 5 of that? Then there is no misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding can be on the number itself. But I think when we don't work on repetitive tasks, it's very important. This will avoid the endless going back and forth to ensure the work is properly done. But I thought you meant that. No, I meant that. Okay, so short, concise, to the point. Now, the twist I like to give to this book, it's not only for managers to give work to their employees. I would also use it for you to, quote unquote, give work to your colleagues. Sometimes there is some dependency between your work and a colleague's work. So instead of being vague or long, just be very precise, send them a short email. This is what I would like you to do. And that will avoid, the multi-handling of the task. Welcome back to the course. Now we are talking about the environment at work. So the big question is, are you too busy to get organized? Because you might be too busy because you are not organized. So a small change in your environment can be a quick win for your time management. This is something that you could really consider. Just to give you an example, when I was working as a consultant, once I ended up working relatively close to a printer. So people usually, printer, water cooler, they usually, when they arrive there, they time out. They like to take it easy, have a bit of a chat. So as I was sitting the closest to the printer, they were more or less ended up talking to me. Say, hey Ben, how's your day? And at the end, I had to say, look, I'm having a great day, but look, I really, have to, I have to get back to work because I get quite a lot of interruptions. So it's not easy to say, but just to give you an example that where you sit, what is around you, can be very detrimental to your output, to your time management. In order to improve our environment, and by doing so to improve our time management, we could ask ourselves those questions. You work from home even, you could ask yourself some of these questions. So are you in the best environment to produce your work? What is slowing you down? Anything you can change right now to be more productive? We all know about having a clean desk, but we don't always do it. And a clean desk that really removes your overwhelmed feeling, that gives you the notion you are well organized and that you have only one thing to do. That's it. It's like a to-do list. If you constantly have a list of 20 items in front of you, you keep thinking, oh, I have to do all this, I have to do all this. If you have a messy desk with all your tasks, spread around, you think, oh yes, I have to do all this. But if you have a clean desk, only one item of your to-do list in front of you, then you can relax and you'll do much better job and you'll go through your tasks faster. Is using two monitors instead of one an option for you? I mean, sometimes it's not your decision and sometimes it costs maybe a bit too much money. But studies have shown that you can increase your productivity by 42%. So once again, those studies, I don't know how they come up with these numbers, but it works. And I know that personally, I find it very difficult when I work with only one monitor now. Could you have a better filing system? Are your folders on your computer well sorted? A good test is how long does it take you to find that file on your desk or on your computer. You need a method. You need a sorting system. And how often do you remove the digital quote-unquote clutter from your computer laptop? Is everything organized by topic and date? I think this is a good way. The topics first, and then after the date, you are most likely to need to access something recent than something old. Archive things. Maybe everything after 1 year, if you don't want to delete them. I know some time management guru ask you to delete them, but maybe be a bit more conservative and just putting in an archive that will make you feel better. And also that will make the decision easier for you. Oh, it's okay, I still have them here. That's something that you could do, and we all know that again. Spend 15 minutes every morning to organize your physical and your digital files. Sort or remove all the emails as we've said, and subscribe from mail lists. And I know so many people that are overwhelmed just by mailing lists. Obviously at work maybe less, but still have a look at this. And that will save you a lot of time of retrieval time. I think a good test is how long does it take you to retrieve something during the day. I'm a big fan of colors. You might have noticed, use color-coded sorting system as much as you can. That just speeds up the retrieval time once again. Find an environment for stuff that really require your full concentration, no distractions. What I used to do is I used to book myself a meeting room when I wanted to really concentrate on a task or to give a series of phone calls maybe. So something that requires really full concentration, book yourself a room, do something, maybe even sitting at a coffee shop if you can. That might be something that you would consider. And what non-human distractions can you remove from your work environment? I mean, it's bittersweet, but I used to have a desk with a view and I was not as productive, let's put it this way, it's very distracting, especially when you see the street, you see the people walking, you see there's always something happening. Do you have some apps on your phone that keep beeping, some alerts? Do you really need them, especially at work? For me, I removed my email app from my phone at some stage because I just was checking it too often, and when I don't really need to. Obviously, if it's a work phone, then you might have a different need. But have a look at the environment. I think the environment is such a quick win, but that's something that really can make a difference in your time management. Welcome back to the course, Time Management Systems. Let's review first the most common issues. So the first issue that I've seen is time management systems are not really a system. They are more a series of tips, not an end-to-end system. The second challenge that I've seen with these time management systems is that they are more geared towards the executives or the CEOs, because they assume that we can delegate what we don't want to do, but we don't all have staff to delegate to. That we have the authority to drop things we feel are not important. That's not something very practical at work. You cannot just drop things. That we can define what is important. I think that's a big one, and I have talked about that already during the introduction of this course. Now, if you are a CEO or an executive, you can say, yes, this is important, this is not important. But for the rest of us, no. So we cannot really define it, and we have to do it all. And also, we can ask people to leave us alone, and I don't think this is really realistic for us. We cannot say, oh, look, go away, I'm busy. This is not well seen to do that. I've said time management systems are geared towards executives, but what I've seen is they're also geared towards personal life. Tips like spending too much time with your kids is more important than time on your phone. Things a little bit obvious like this, where what is important is very clear, as opposed to when you go to work, where you cannot really make that decision. Issue number 4 is they are very theoretical. And the last issue is that they are not sustainable. But is that an issue or not? I think this is actually inevitable. You cannot use the same time management system all your life. There is not one time management system you can use 100% for 100% of your time. It will change with you, your job, and your time. So my advice is you pick and choose the best parts for you, the parts that are more suited for you. So you are not going to find the one time management system that's going to solve all your challenges, I believe. If you do, you're lucky, and let me know. It's more, you have a look at several ones and you pick the best part of each based on your own personality. Welcome back. Now, one of the most common time management systems, if we can call that a system, is called the Eisenhower Matrix. And I believe it's used by Steve Covey, the guy who wrote the 7 Habits of Successful People. Now, we split things into 4 categories. Let's have a look at those categories. So there is important and non-important, and there is urgent and non-urgent. One category is important and urgent, and what we do with this is we need to focus on those tasks. The second category is urgent and non-important, the bottom right. And what you do with those is that you delegate them. The third category, if you go back to the top, is important and non-urgent. And what you do with those is you schedule them. Last category, non-important and non-urgent, and you avoid those at all costs. So right from the start, I have a problem with this. I said it already several times, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. Who decide what's important or not? And it could be dangerous for us to decide what is important when we have to report or when we work in a team. Because more often than not, we don't have the authority to do that. So for me, it all needs to be done. So the next challenge I have with this matrix is delegation. Yep, it would be nice if we could delegate everything. I was just talking about this on the slide just before, so I will leave that one alone. Of course, if you are a manager, delegate those, but we cannot all do it. And finally, the avoid those tasks. I talk about this later on, but for me, there are two options with those. First of all, what are they doing on your list if they are non-important and non-urgent? They shouldn't even be there. You should try and avoid them, but before they are even allocated to you. Challenge them. The second thing about this category here is that you need to schedule them as well. There's nothing worse as a manager when you allocate a non-urgent and non-important task to someone and you have faith in them and you trust they're going to do it, but you have to keep reminding them because, of course, they see that as non-important and non-urgent, so they're never going to do it. So it's a bit of a time management nightmare that for both sides. For the manager, because he's still unsure if this is going to be done or not, and for the guy doing it, because he's really not sure if he should be doing them or not. I mean, why would I be doing this when I have other things to do? So he always put this one at the bottom of its list. So this is for the Eisenhower Matrix. On the next slide, I want to show you what I could see as a replacement of this. That's just to give you a sneak preview on the time management system that I've put in this course. I called it the Benz Matrix, so it's not confused with the Eisenhower Matrix. But the assumption is that it all needs to be done and that we cannot delegate. I've replaced urgent, non-urgent with deadlines, no deadlines, and important, not important with enjoy and do not enjoy. So this is, if you want, my philosophy. It all needs to be done, so it all needs to be on a schedule somewhere. We separate what has a deadline and what doesn't have a deadline. And we separate not important and non-important, but what we enjoy and what we do not enjoy. So we'll do it all, but we will work with the enjoy and do not enjoy differently. I will go into much more detail on this stuff, but I just wanted to show this to you now that we've just seen the Eisenhower Matrix, just to put it in context a little bit. Welcome back. A quick overview of the Pomodoro Technique. So what we do with the Pomodoro Technique is that we time when we work. I think it'd be easier to show you this diagram here. You start work and you work for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, you have a break of 5 minutes. After that, you work again for 25 minutes. After that, you have a break for 5 minutes. Now you keep doing that for another cycle. You work for 25 minutes, you have a break for 5 minutes, you work for 25 minutes, and then at this point, approximately 2 hours after you've started, you have a longer break. So you have short bursts of work, and then you have a little bit of a rest in between. Let's have a look at my view on this technique and the pros and cons that I've seen in notes. So the pros, for me, I like the fact that it's structured. Everything with a structure, it's always better. And it really forces you to focus and it forces you to have some discipline. What I like also is it can be tailored. I mean, they say 25 minutes, but based on the type of work that you do, it could be shorter or it could be longer. It depends on your line of work. 25 minutes might not be practical for you, but you can change it. I really like it when you have one of those very difficult tasks that you don't enjoy doing and you really need to push yourself to finish it. Tasks that you are not really motivated to do. No excuse, I have to work for 25 minutes and after I have a break. Now the disadvantages of this technique is a bit too structured in my view. And this is why I suggest a bit of a of a change, if you like. And this is the snooze that there is on the next point here that doesn't allow for a snooze. What I mean by the snooze is that you work for 25 minutes, and if you are in the flow, you have this alarm that comes up and you have to stop then. And this is really not good, because when you're in a flow, you need to stay in a flow, if only for 2 to 3 minutes. So this is this abrupt stop, if you like, that I don't really like. I'll show you how to work around that one. Now, is that sustainable long term? Can you work only with Pomodoro? I don't think so. I see that as a tool that you use just for some specific tasks. And also, is that easy to implement when you work around people? This is a bit of a challenge. You are in the middle of your Pomodoro, someone comes to your desk. What do? You say, wait, I finished my 25 minutes. So it's probably done best when you are on your own, maybe a meeting room or the likes. So this is for the pros and cons. My suggestion is that you tailor it to your needs. You work in a very active work, maybe 25 minutes is even too long. Maybe you need just a short burst of 15 minutes. The other way around, if it's not practical for you to work for 25 minutes and have a longer slice of time, if you like. I suggest that you have a bit of a snooze button on your app, because usually you use app for this. And when you are in a flow, you just say, okay, I've done my 25 minutes. Now I will be working a little bit more. I'll show you that on the next slide. My suggestion, as I was implying, is you keep only for certain tasks, critical tasks you have been postponing and you don't really feel like doing, and preferably to be done when you are on your own. So let's have a look at this on a more visual way. So this is the way I would have it. You work your 20 minutes. I've changed 25 to 20 minutes here so that I can show the snooze. So you work for 20 minutes, and after you have a snooze here, when 20 minutes rings, you give yourself 1 to 5 minutes to complete your task, to finish your train of thought. Or you could be ready straight away. And after you have your break, you work, you have a potential snooze, and after you have your break, and after you start all this again. I think it works better with this type of snooze. Let's have a quick look at this 90-minute quote-unquote technique. So what you do with this is you actually spend 90 minutes fully focused on the task. And after you have a break, maybe 15 minutes. And after you spend another 90 minutes fully focused on the task. And after you have a break, and after 90 minutes. And you can go on as long as you like. This is apparently used by the most successful people, and that really got my attention. So it must be working. You would think that it works if it's used by the most successful people. I mean, try it. So it requires more concentration as opposed to Pomodoro, where you have short bursts of 20-25 minutes. It really requires more concentration. And you usually move on to the different task after your 90 minutes. You spend 90 minutes fully focused on the task. It's study backed. It's a great way to ensure that you spend enough time on some areas you tend to neglect. And that's it for me. That's a draw card. I mean, this is why probably at home it's probably best than at work, because at work it all needs to be done. But here I think it would be more suited for self-employed, when they have to work on different types of tasks and they neglect some types of tasks. For instance, they have to do it all. They have to do accounting as well, and they are not really into this. So maybe they start the day with doing 90 minutes of fully concentrating on the accounting work. And after they do their creative work that they are maybe more inclined to do. So it's more, I would say, more maybe for self-employed, independent people who have different type of tasks. So you spend one type of task for 90 minutes and after another type of task for 90 minutes. It's good when you are overwhelmed with a variety of things to do. Whether or not it works for your work, it's for you to see. But I just wanted to put it out there. Now let's build a system. Now, as mentioned, you usually don't take 100% of one system. So if you could take a few tips from this one, I think that'll be good. But anyway, it's up to you. I'm going to walk you through it, and after you can make your own mind. But before I start, I wanted to run you through some principles and assumptions that I have for this course. So the first one, I've mentioned it already, is that it all needs to be done. Once you have ensured that the work is necessary, it has to be done. You cannot just not do it. You cannot just put it in a non-urgent phase. The second principle is we need to do it all, so might as well do the urgent things first. Goes against the grain already, I know, but this system is really different. Another principle is that we replace the what is hard by what we don't enjoy doing. So the assumption is that you will have no problem working on tasks that you enjoy doing, even if they are hard. And every decision is emotional anyway. So what you don't enjoy, you will not want to do it. Another assumption is that we cannot always delegate. So we want to reduce stress of facing too many tasks at once. We want to deactivate the amygdala. And finally, we need to grow in the process. We're not just here to tick things off. We want to grow. We want this to be useful for us personally on the long term. Now, just to summarize what I'm trying to achieve with this system is, I've had so many of my staff come to me and say, Ben, look at all those tasks that I have. And they were showing me something like this. I have so many tasks, I'll never be able to do them all. You need to remove some tasks of me. And of course, the amygdala is engaged. They have fears, they don't think clearly, and they see all those tasks and that's it. So usually after sitting with them for 30 minutes to 1 hour, they felt more relaxed because they have walked through all those tasks, put them into categories, order, priorities, and after feeling better. After 30 minutes, 1 hour, this is what they had. A task list like this. Just today is Monday. I have to do these tasks and I only look at what I have right in front of me. I look at the day in front of me. Amygdala is disengaged and the neocortex is engaged. So from this to that. Now, let's have a look how it works. High-level view of the system. First, we prioritize tasks, then we schedule them. So we define the tasks, we estimate them, and we categorize them. And that gives us a time-based scheduling. We schedule per day. So the end game is to have all that we have to do in a schedule. The prioritization first, we have 4 components. First, we define what our personal goals are, not the business goals, personal goals. Then we define and estimate each task, as I was saying. Now, depending on your types of task, depending on your work, could be in hours or could be in days. Then you check the dependencies between the tasks. That's very important, obviously. Then you categorize each task. And we'll talk more about this. Now, the overview again. Now, define what your personal goals are. So optionally, if you want, I have another course on goal setting to plan for your goal. You can have a look at this. But you should always bear in mind your personal goals when you plan your work. Now, the second thing, when you define and estimate these tasks, you provide you with time frames to complete each task. We've seen the Parkinson's law, which means you have to estimate your task, otherwise it's going to take you forever. Then you check dependencies between the tasks. That allows for time-based scheduling, and as we've seen. And then you categorize each task. So this is a 4-step process. And this is for prioritization. Now, prioritization, we define what your personal goals are. I think it's important to set ourselves some personal goals. This way we can prioritize the tasks that are in line with these personal goals. You know, look at yourself what you want to be in 2 years' time. Do you want to get promoted? Do you want to build enough knowledge to start your own business? Because this really would help you prioritize the tasks later on. Do you want to branch out? You know, you might love marketing, but you want to go more in sales, vice versa. If you're a developer, what do you prefer, the business or the technical side? because that would really stress which area of your task you want to really focus on, that you want to put the most effort in. So knowing this will help you plan for your task later on. And a good way to check on your goals is to ask yourself, is the company growing without me? Am I growing in what I'm doing? Or what are the tasks that would really allow me to grow? So that's something that you need to have a look at. Second thing about prioritization is you define and estimate each task. So you list all the work that needs to be done. So every piece of work that you have to do should be as a task. For instance, even the email responses, that is a task. We've seen there are a lot of advantages grouping them, so you can put that as a task. Respond to emails, one task. Phone calls, same, if you can group them, it is ideal, and that's a task as well. When you list your tasks, you need to include the planning time as well. You need to include a task that is planning. You need to include the things that you need to think about. For instance, if you have to do a marketing strategy, this is a task. Sometimes we think, I'll think about that on my way to the meeting. But it is a task, it will take you time, and it's important that it's on your schedule. And we will talk about buffers, and they can be very useful as well, but that's for later on in this course. When there are projects, we need to break them into smaller tasks. Unless you're a full-time project manager, if you have something that is quite big to do, like this, you need to have a project which is task 1, task 2, task 3, and then after your project is completed. All these activities that form or your project or your big task need to be listed as well. List them all. Now, on top of this list of tasks, we have to create a separate list for the potentials, things that could come up, things you might have to do. There could be risks, tasks you are not sure if you will need, and the likes. For instance, ask yourself this question: I might get asked to do this. I have this 10 tasks, but something else could come up as well. Put these 11 tasks on your task list, but put this down as a potential. If this happens, I'll have this to do. So it's like the risk management, if you like. If this happens, then I'll have to do this. So put that as a task. Other example, this needs to be reviewed, and I don't know if you need to rework it. So reworking a task is a task. I might have to go to that meeting. Put this meeting as a task. It's a potential. Now, the unit for estimating depends on your line of work. If you work on big 10 months projects or 10 months activities, then you want to estimate in days probably. 3 days for this, 5 days for that. But if you work on smaller things, then in hours, it would make more sense. That helps you fight the perfectionism. And obviously, that also helps your time management. So also, when we provide estimates for our work, that improves the quality of our work and overall time management. It seems counterintuitive, but when we have a time frame, this is when we do our best work. As long as we are not stressed, obviously. And all this is necessary to produce a time-based task list. Continuing. Now we check the dependencies between the tasks. So that should be easy. You have an activity that starts, task 1, task 2, task 3. You need to know the dependency between those tasks. So you know that when you write your schedule, you need to have task 1 first, and after task 2, and after task 3. It seems obvious, but it's always good to bear that in mind, because you'll be surprised. And finally, you categorize each task. And this is a 4-step process, and we will see that in the next lecture. Now, categorization. 4-step process. 1. Task that we do now. Task with due date and tasks with no due date. We have a look at those first. Then, tasks that we enjoy and tasks that we don't enjoy doing. Then we do tasks that align with our goals. Then we add a buffer. So let's walk you through this process. Let's have a look at the first step. First, we have the tasks that take less than 10 minutes. I said 10 minutes, it's up to you. If you want to have 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you can change it, but I suggest 10 minutes here. And also a 10-minute task can easily turn into a 30-minute task that we've touched on before. You know, if it's on your task list and you keep moving in from task list to task list and people chase you up after this. So this is really, for me, the key thing. Do now the task that will take you less than 10 minutes. So in other words, you need to list those first. After, they don't need to go on your schedule. Then we have tasks with due dates. So tasks that you know you absolutely have to complete by a point in time. It all needs to be done. We want to be efficient and on time. So we ensure we are not late. There is a due date, we will meet this due date. And then you list the task without due dates, which is all the other tasks. The next step, we go from 3 categories to 5 categories. We keep the first category, tasks that are less than 10 minutes, but the tasks with due date, we split them into 2. We split them into tasks that we enjoy and tasks that we do not enjoy. Tasks with no due date, same principle, we split them into tasks we enjoy and tasks we do not enjoy. So as you progress, you'll see you will do that very quickly. To start with, you feel, oh, that's a lot to think about, but you will do that without even thinking. The tasks that we do not enjoy, we have a part on the course that might help you to put them in a category more that you enjoy. Now, step 3, we align with our goals. What does that mean? The tasks with due date, they have to be done, so they need to be scheduled. This is not in question. But the tasks that don't have any due dates, we prioritize those in such a way that the tasks that are good for your goal are being done first. That allows us to spend more time on it, to be more thorough on those, because we know they are good for us. So we don't want to rush those. Step 4, we add buffers. Another word for buffers, I think that is probably more politically correct. It's contingency. It sounds a bit more professional, but I will stick to buffer for this training because I think it's a broader meaning. Buffer and contingency, this is really very important because we don't want to chase our tail in a loop. Now let's have a look at what we could use this buffer for. Now when you see this list, you think, oh yes, I definitely need a buffer. So this buffer will be added to each day allocation. Every day you need to have some room for a buffer. Now you might think, oh Ben, I don't have room for a buffer, but we'll see, we slide other things to the next day, but because we need to have a buffer. Let's go through this list first, and after you can decide if you need a buffer or not. But buffer will be used if we are late on tasks. Imagine you have planned for your 5 tasks to do today and 5 tasks only. And then you're late on one. They are all late. At the end of the day, you are stressed. And you feel that you need to stay later. We can also use this buffer for new tasks that have come up. We can also use it for tasks that are less than 10 minutes that we do on the spot, remember? If we have 6 of those in one day, it's already 1 hour gone. We can use it for replanning when we need to reshuffle our schedule. We can use it to have a rest. And it's not time wasted, it actually makes you more proficient. We can use it for risks that could occur. You have a risk that you didn't plan for, you use it. And the overall idea is prevents overwhelm if your plan was not right. As I was mentioning, you don't want to be chasing your tail. And if you have an unused buffer at the end of the day, I'm sure you will know what to do with it. But either fun time or you can put yourself ahead on your task for the next day. Now this is a summary before we move on to scheduling. The prioritization goes from the top to the bottom. First, tasks that are less than 10 minutes, then tasks with due date, tasks you do not enjoy, tasks you enjoy, and we put the buffer here. And then we have the task good for your goals, you do not enjoy, you enjoy, and then you put some buffer here. It would look something like this. Now you have all your tasks. Now to start with, you isolate all the ones that take less than 10 minutes or the amount of time you've decided. And you do them straight away. You don't put them on your to-do list. You don't do this with those. You don't do that with those. You just do them straight away. Even if it takes you half a day at doing tasks that take less than 10 minutes to do, you would have ticked so many tasks off your list. So this is the first thing to do. We do not put those on the to-do list. We do them straight away. Then you remove the one with due date. Then you highlight the one that you enjoy doing. Then you sort out the ones that are good for your goals. And some of the tasks that you do not enjoy, I suggest you use Pomodoro for some of those, or the tasks that you really need a lot of concentration for. The one that have a due date, then you need to put them on your calendar and give you sufficient buffer so you can complete them on time. Now the scheduling is easy. You just need to take your diaries with your days and the amount of time and schedule your tasks. First one, the tasks that take you less than 10 minutes. Then you schedule the ones with due dates and a buffer. And then you schedule the other one, starting with the one that have a strategic importance for you. At the beginning of this course, we had a look at this diagram here. And on the top right here, we had potentials. They are part of your time management. If you ignore those, it's at your own risk, because those need to be taken into account. They don't exist yet. And this is the one that usually put you off. And we've seen also before that we need to list all the tasks, including the potentials, the one that might come up. So what we do now is we actually list them. So we have the list of all the potentials. So we have also all these tasks. They are part of our scheduling as well, but on the side, not yet on the schedule. And there is another category which is called the to be allocated category. Is, let's say you go into a meeting and you spend all day in meetings and doing stuff like that, and you know you will have more tasks. There is a space that you could use where you put all the tasks that are to be allocated when you have a moment. I mean, I suggest to have morning planning sessions, so maybe that's a good time for you to allocate them. Let's have a look how it would look like. So this is it. This is the one-pager view. On the left, to be allocated, so that's the one that just came up. You have the potentials also that you list there. So they have the same color as a buffer because they would go into the buffer if you end up having to do them. I suggest to start with, have a task for planning and organizing every day. Could be 15 minutes, it could be 1 hour. Then you put all your tasks and then you have a buffer. So you follow the priorities that we've discussed and you put them each for a day. So this is called time-based scheduling. It is the best, I believe, way to do time management, to have something for each day. I have planning, but also organizing, plan/organize, because organizing your desk, as we've seen, can be very important. Organizing your digital files, your folders, your environment. Think about if you need to do some tasks in Pomodoro, for instance, if you need to use the 90-minute technique, maybe as well, if you need to book a room so you can be on your own for the task. So do all this the first thing in the morning, plan all that. And then you have buffers during the day, just in case. Another view here, just to show you that, I've decided to do those in Pomodoro. So the little clock here means Pomodoro. And the other ones that are the due date, I've put them here as a schedule day. So I do those first. And then what happens is when you look at your day, this is it. So then you only have one day in front of you, and then you pick one task and you do them sequentially. So you don't have to worry about all these other tasks now. They have been taken care of. They are not for today. Now another view, a bit of a longer term view. It's always good to have a long-term scheduling as well. You think, oh, that's good for my week, but the weeks ahead, for instance, if your type of job requires you to work on a longer term, then obviously you have a longer term scheduling. This week I'll do job 1, job 2, job 2. And this is good also for personal planning. Sometimes you're overwhelmed, I need to do all this, I need to do all this. But as soon as you put a date in front of them and know, well, I'll do them one at a time, then you feel a bit more relaxed and then you can keep going. So that's it, short term. Long term, you can have months, you can do this on any scale that you like. Now this is obviously just one attempt at putting a system together. You might not like the idea of having things that you enjoy, things that you don't enjoy. You might not like the idea of separating tasks that are good for your goals. You might not like the idea of buffers. But do it the way you want, just remove one or two things. What is really important is at the end of the day, you're not overwhelmed by having too many tasks that don't have a category or a schedule to it. So give it a go and let me know. Now, I'm sure you've noticed that we always have time to do the things that we enjoy doing. And I think for this reason, it's quite important to have as many as those as possible. As you've noticed in my time management system, I put those aside, the ones that we enjoy doing and the ones that we don't enjoy doing. So spend a little bit of time on this and try if you could change this perspective on some of the tasks that you don't enjoy doing. Obviously, as I mentioned, if you have too many of those, you need a new job. It's not always easy, so I don't want to be too patronizing here, but try those tricks if for the short term, if you want to see the job that you don't enjoy doing from a different perspective. The first thing to try is reframing. So reframing is a great method to get you moving when you are stuck and that you cannot really change your environment. I'm not saying it will always work long term, but it keeps you going when you are stuck in a situation sometimes. Let me give you an example to start with. My neighbors have a very annoying dog. He's one of those tiny little dogs that bark at everything within 20 meters from where he is. So now this was really getting on my nerves because I really didn't like his high-pitched barking, right? So I asked myself, how can I see that differently? How can I reframe that? So what I came up with was that, in fact, this little doggy here is keeping my house safe. He's my alarm. Because whenever someone comes close to my house, here he comes, barking like crazy. So now every time I hear him bark, I think, thank you for protecting my house. Same situation, but I see the positive with it. I found the benefits. I have reframed it. Now for work, it can help you when you really have zero motivation. Try and find the benefits of your task. Let's see some questions now that you could ask yourself to get you started on reframing the things you don't enjoy at work. So can I use this task to showcase my skills? I might be judged by it, so I might as well try and showcase my skills. Will this task bring me closer to my goal? Let's not lose sight of the goal. I might not really enjoy it, but it takes me one step closer. Would that increase my value on the job market? Now, how can I do this task differently that will make it more enjoyable? Can I change my environment? Maybe do it somewhere else? Coffee shop, listen to music, have a cup of coffee on the side? How can I add something so that it's more enjoyable? Another thing you can try is to put this task in context. Compare this task with other things you could be doing. It could go along the lines, I am lucky to have to do this. I'm actually getting paid for it. Some guys don't even have a job. And some guys work on the side of the road when it rains. It's terrible. At least I'm sitting at the desk, everything is fine. If you are working in a desk job, you can tell yourself that. And finally, try and finish those two sentences here. At least I'm not doing this, doing that. Isn't it great that I have this, that I can do this, that I'm getting paid or whatever? Just fill the blanks. That's your gig. When we had a look at the procrastination part of this course, we had a look at something a little bit similar, is analyze why you do not enjoy doing this task. Is there something about this task that you don't like? What can I learn about myself from this? Concern that might not be performing the task very well? Sometimes this is why we say, oh, I don't like it, but in fact there is something behind. Why do I think that? Maybe I don't feel that I'm good enough. In this case, have a look at the examples when you've been doing a great job with this task. Am I concerned I'll be in trouble with my boss? Is there a fear behind the task? That's a more generic question. Can I challenge that fear? Now, are there other people enjoying doing that task? And what do they enjoy about it? Maybe I'm missing something. So it's still worth asking yourself that question. I could give you a couple of examples for reframing the task you don't like. For instance, if your task is to write your monthly report, let's just see what could be the benefits. It's a good way for you to communicate clearly your achievements. You've been working hard, put it in a report. It could be an opportunity for you to impress your boss and the management team with a detailed account of your activities of the week. You could suggest some improvements to the current work you are doing. You complain about something, put it in a report. You could highlight an important problem that your boss might not have thought of. You could make people realize that you are doing a good work and actually performing a lot of tasks in a month. You could highlight some great work for your team has done. If you're a manager, it's very satisfying to give a good word about other people. And you could tell yourself, it will be my best written report ever. I will do it so well, everyone will be impressed. And also it's good for you, good satisfaction, perfect grammar, perfect vocabulary, different words, there you go. Another example, say you're in a sales job, you have to give 10 clients a call. And you really don't look forward to it. Could you tell yourself, I will have 10 opportunities today to improve my relationships with clients. I can practice what I have learned. Even if they don't need a product, even if I don't make that sale, I will make sure they will remember me for the next time. So that closes at just a couple of examples. Go crazy, go wild. Sometimes we just say, I don't enjoy that task, but let's have a look at if we can find other ways that make that task more enjoyable. Once again, I'm not saying it's a long-term solution, but it will keep you going. That's it for reframing. Another thing you can try when there is a specific task that you do not enjoy is try to be more efficient with it. So you spend less time on it. Makes sense. You're in a bad situation, might as well make it as short as possible. So ask yourself this question, can I be more efficient with that task? Am I doing it right? Communicate with peers. How are they doing it? How long does it take them? If it takes them less than me, then I certainly can improve on something. Do they have any tips? People love giving tips when they think they're doing well. Can I discuss with my manager if there's a better way to do this task? Look, boss, I'm really progressing very slowly on this one. What is a magic trick? Is there an opportunity for me to streamline that task? For instance, group it with several similar tasks and do it all in one go. If this is a technical task or repetitive task involving, for instance, collating data from Excel, Word, database, whatever, can you actually automate some tasks? Sometimes this is feasible and you could say, well, I'm going to need more time actually this time because I'd like to work on some automation. Next thing to try, and it seems to be a bit extreme, but it's actually quite legitimate. Ideally, you would avoid a task even before you accept it. But even after the event, it's not forbidden to try and avoid having to do it. Let's see some options. So before I get started, communication is key. You don't want to sound like the guy, oh, I don't want to do this. Communication is key. Adapt your communication style to your manager. Now, to avoid the task, obviously, if you're a manager, you can delegate it. But one of the assumptions is that we cannot delegate. If you can, do it. Now see if someone else would be willing to do this task. Sometimes you do a task you've been doing for a long time and it doesn't challenge you anymore. But someone else might enjoy doing it because there's the skill that they haven't got yet. So someone else might enjoy doing it because they are learning something new when you don't. And someone, maybe same as you, same skills, might enjoy doing it. God knows why. But there are always things that we enjoy and others don't, and vice versa. So maybe you can bargain something there. Another thing to try is learn how to say no to those tasks. Why not? See lesson on saying no. I know it's not always feasible, but sometimes, yeah. Look, that task, I really don't enjoy it. I've done it too many times. Is there any way someone else could do it? Explain to your manager that you could bring more value doing something else. There's a bit of, negotiation here. A bit more challenging, even without a pay increase. You could say, well, I could be doing this instead, if it's something that above your pay grade, at least initially, do it without a pay increase. And that will move you away from that task that you don't enjoy. There's something that always amazes me is, if you give someone a job sometimes that is above their pay grade, the first thing they say is, oh, why would I do it? I'm not being paid more. I really don't understand this, because you have the opportunity here to learn something that down the track could get you more money, but you just don't want to do it because, I'm going to keep the same salary, so what's the point? So that's something that you could try and do. And if you go and negotiate with your boss, if you go and say, look, I don't like this task, can I have something else? He might say, oh, yeah, tough leg, join the club. But if you say, well, I would be willing to do this instead, then I might say, okay, that's okay. She might say, fine. Now, as mentioned to start with, if there are too many tasks you don't enjoy, then maybe it's time for a change of career. I know it's not always possible, but I needed to put this out there. Now let me give you a story on how Kaizen works. Now every week I usually go for a long walk with my wife. We do that first thing in the morning. And every time we do it, we're very happy. It's good for us. We enjoy doing it before we start our day's work. But there was one morning we really didn't feel like doing it. We had a poor night. The weather was not fantastic. And we thought, oh, maybe we could skip it today. But what I said was, let's just do a 10-minute walk. We usually go for a 1-hour walk, but I said there is a small pond around us, so let's just go walk around the pond and come back home. And after I added, we'll see what happens when we're at the pond. So what happened was we reached the pond, and at the pond we decided, well, we're here, might as well keep going. And we kept going, and we were happy to do so. We were not pushing ourselves. But we would never have made that decision to go for a long walk when we were at home. That was just too daunting. I didn't feel like doing it. I thought, oh, not today. But going just for that short walk, yeah, that's fine. Something I could do. So this is Kaizen for you. Instead of seeing the big job, see something smaller that you think, oh yeah, that's not a problem, I can do it. And at work, it works very well. Next thing to try is try to Kaizen them. It's hard to say, but it's quite useful. Now we've seen when we had a look at do the hard things first, also called eat that frog, that the challenge I highlighted was that if you don't do the big stuff first, all other tasks that are stuck behind won't be done as well and you delay everything. But if you do the easiest part of the hard thing, then it might get you started. I suggested Kaizen for all the quote-unquote hard things. This way that gets you started on the difficult job. Now, what is Kaizen? It's a fancy word that means something quite simple, in fact. So Kaizen, there's also a lot of things around Kaizen. There's also continuous improvement. But this doesn't apply here. Here I just want to leave those parts aside and just concentrate on do something small first. So Kaizen, start with something so small you won't even think twice about doing it. And why? Because when you have something large that you don't enjoy, that is big, then you have fear. And the thinking brain is not engaged. So by doing Kaizen, you have something small in front of you. And then the thinking brain is engaged. Remember the amygdala. So when you have the amygdala taking over, you are stressed, you procrastinate, you don't get moving. So our goal is to deactivate the amygdala. And how do we do that? We use Kaizen, which is we have a look at just a small task. Forget about all the big tasks. Now the example I give on my goal setting course, which is free by the way if you want to have a look at it, but it's just climbing that mountain. If I tell you, oh, you have to climb that mountain, you might be spending days thinking, oh, do I want to do this? Oh, when? But if I tell you just to walk 20 meters, you do it already, it's done. You're on your way. So Kaizen is start with the easiest part. Once you get started, you could see yourself keeping at it until completion, like my walk. Or the next time around, as you are on your way and there is less to do, it might seem less daunting. And just to know that a task that you dread doing could be the sum of small tasks that you don't mind doing. So this is great, so try it. Another thing that works well for tasks we don't enjoy, and I know it works well for me, and I've done it many times, is use Pomodoro to go through them. So we've seen Pomodoro giving you a chart here as a reminder, so that you work for 25 minutes, and after you have a break for 5 minutes, and after you work for 25 minutes, and so on. As an optional, if you need really an extra incentive, is you can give yourself a little reward during those 5 minutes, maybe another cup of coffee, or I don't know what you enjoy doing, but have a walk outside or something very brief like this, if it helps you. It's a good idea also to check how many Pomodoro slices you think you need around the task. Let's say you feel it's usually 1 hour and a half, so here you go. So you have 3 slices. Here you give yourself 3 slices. I'm doing these 3 slices after I need to finish it. Another tip, if you like, is if you break down this into 3 Pomodoro slices, let's say, then your first slice, you should try and do the easiest part. Once again, a bit of a Kaizen here. Do what is easy first out of your hard stuff. So here you go. Pomodoro, really like it, really recommend it. As mentioned, when we saw Pomodoro, I won't use it for everything, but for things very specific that you don't enjoy, go for it. And this is the last tip on things to do when you don't enjoy a task. Now you've tried it all. You have a good system, you did some work on yourself, you change your environment, and you feel that you are still very, 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 very busy, and you are really convinced that your workload is just too high. So try those. So a disclaimer here, that might not work with every manager, so be careful when you apply some of those, but give it a try. I think my philosophy is at work you can get away with almost anything if you communicate it properly. Now here's a quote for you. Now this is a little bit in your face, and I'm not saying I fully agree with it, but the overall idea is take action when you have too many tasks instead of blaming others. Blaming others means that you are not in control. So you need to do whatever is needed to get back in control. And it starts with communicating. When you feel that you are not in control, this is what causes stress. Now let's have a look at what we can do. There's something I couldn't really understand at work. I heard so many people complaining about stuff, like I'm too busy, for instance, and actually not talking to anyone about it, not talking to their managers about it. Sometimes they do, not always the right way, that happens, but sometimes they just don't. So they complain, and I ask them, have you actually told anyone? And say no, because they don't feel they're even entitled to challenge their workload. I don't know if it comes because sometimes they're a bit too young. So you have your parents, you have to listen to them, and after you go to school and you have to listen to your teachers. But at work, we are all adults. I'm not saying there are not some extreme managers. So what can we do? So the first thing is to communicate. Just bring awareness. Even if you don't get anything out of it, you bring awareness. So let people know without complaining the amount of tasks that you have to do. Doesn't have to be only your managers, just let people know, as long as it doesn't come across as you complaining. Make it formal. Don't go to your manager's desk and say, oh, I'm too busy. Just make it formal. Request a meeting to discuss and say, I have something important to discuss with you. And then you organize a meeting. It will show that you have actually thought about it. It's not just you feel stressed today and you go and say, I'm busy today. Once again, this is not venting. This is not complaining. This is purely reporting that you are too busy, that you have too much on your plate. If you are just venting, it could come across as being passive-aggressive. And it's not good for you. So in other words, what you have to choose between is being the quiet one at work, who's always here, always available, never say no, and being told, oh, he's so good. He's always doing all his tasks. What a good boy. The other option is you being assertive and you stand up for yourself. It's okay to be busy for a short period of times, but if it's ongoing, there is something wrong. This is what I put clearly when I was interviewing. I said, it's fine to be late for a short burst of time, but if it's ongoing, there is a problem. And something else is sometimes you accept a lot of tasks, and after you realize that's just too much, because tasks can take longer than what you anticipated. It's fine. There's no shame in going back and say, yes, I took all that on, but now I'm realizing this is just too much. And you explain. Some of my tasks too longer than what I thought. There has been some challenges along the way. There's been some delays, etc. Let's move on to the next part, which is saying no. Now, the first thing to do when we are too busy is to stop taking on more work. So let's see how we can say no. So the first thing to do is not start with just the word no and try and avoid saying it to start with. No, sorry, I can't. You need to sugar it up a bit. I would love to help at this stage, or something like this. You need to show concern to start with. You need to listen. You need to show them that you understand their request, that you understand why they need more work. Otherwise, it's like you working in your little corner and you just want to do your own stuff. You have to show that you understand the bigger picture as well. What I suggest to say here, wow, it really looks like it's important for you to do that job on time. I understand. I'm currently doing this and I need to focus on this. So this is important first, to show the concern and listen. It's a bit disarming. Let's say someone comes to you and say, can you do this please? And you say, no, I'm busy. So that wouldn't come across well. Another thing to do is always give a reason, and we'll have a look at Cialdini's view on this. But, say that what you are doing will impact the quality of your current tasks. And you can go on and on about the reasons why that will delay you, and what you are doing actually is also quite important. So you have to overload them with information, almost to the stage where they say, okay, I get it. Explain that, if you do something else, then that will cause delays on your current task and they won't be finished on time, and this will impact the team and therefore your manager's work. Give explanations. And why give explanations? Why give reasons? Let's have a look at this. You might have heard of it. It's something that Robert Cialdini in his work referred to a study. So there was a queue at the copy machine and someone wanted to jump the queue. All right, so they made this experiment. And the guy wanting to jump the queue was asking things in a different way each time, just to see the outcome. The first thing he was asking was, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox? And the request put this way, there was 60% let him skip the line. But if they say, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the copy machine because I'm in a rush? That jumped to 94% that let him jump the queue. And if they say, may I use the copy machine because I have to make copies, the obvious, 93% let him. So there is a big jump here just by giving a reason. And as you've seen, the reason doesn't have to be logical. May I use this because I have to make copies? Duh. So it's like very important to give a reason. But there's something else in his survey that I find amazing is that 60% let him skip the line. Just going back to the beginning of this, when you have too many tasks, part is that always communicate, always ask the question. Because even 60%, I find that amazing. I mean, you see someone using something, even if you say, can I jump the queue? They say, yes, in 60% of the time. Amazing. Now, let's continue on learning how to say no. So you need to provide an alternative. Say, for instance, that you will be able to do this in 4 weeks. Even if it's not realistic, it shows that you care and that you're willing to help, just not now. It shows you care and that you are willing to help, but the only thing is just not right now. You can suggest another team. I don't like suggesting another team member. It seems like, ask John to do this. He'll be very happy to do that. And I prefer to say a team. Have you asked the other team? Because at the moment, our team is quite busy. Now you offer to help if appropriate. That's more a bit of negotiation, if you like. You do the work, or someone else do the work, but I would be happy to review. So it shows that you are still involved, you're still willing to help, but not to the extent that they want you to. So you could negotiate, if you want to do this, but are too busy with other tasks that you don't really want to do. You could say, I would love to do this. If only I could pass this current task to someone else. I'd love to help. Can you help me as well by removing some of the tasks that I have on my plate? Now, some of us are not comfortable setting boundaries. Some of us are not comfortable saying no to tasks. Once again, let's see how we can address this. If you communicate properly, there is no reason your boss will think less of you. On contrary, I think it could actually turn in your favor, as your boss will realize how great communicator you are, and that you're not the type of person to say yes in front and then complain behind her back. If you go to her desk and say, I'm too busy with this, I need help, it will not be as efficient as if you ask for a formal meeting, as we've said, to review the workload and you break down the work you are doing and say that you want to keep the quality up and that you don't want to let her down. What a difference that would be for you. Another thing is you might think that you would see that as a failure. I'm asking for help, so I'm a failure. But you are setting boundaries. You're not blaming anyone. You're actually taking action. Another thing to make you feel better about setting boundaries is think about the long-term gains. You are not a walkover. You can be assertive and stand up for yourself. Managers usually do not like conflict. And they will think twice before piling up on your workload the next time. Because they will know that you can provide a fair assessment of your workload. As opposed to your colleagues who just say no. So this is something that you really need to do, is to learn to live with the guilt, quote unquote, you feel after turning down a task. You feel guilty because you are not meeting someone else's need, but instead you are meeting your need. You are standing up for yourself. Try this when everything else fails. So the overall idea is to not deliver all the time when you are being asked to deliver. So you've tried it all. You've tried to communicate. You tried to say that you have too much on your plate, that impacts the quality of your work, that you are working late already, and you have a good time management system. You know that your delays are not due to other factors like the environment all that we've seen in his course. So you've ticked all the boxes, but still you are being asked to do more and more work. The first thing to do is to give some notice. Look, you've gave me a lot and I'm getting really busy using the method that we've discussed before. And you give some warning. I'm not sure if I'll be able to deliver because, as mentioned, I am really busy and next week I have some personal commitment even. Do it in writing if you can. Give plenty of notice. Still do your best to deliver what you can, but if something is late, do not work late for the 10th time in a row. The penny has to drop at some stage. If your manager keeps giving you work and you complain but you deliver, so he would say, okay, I can keep giving these guys work then. More, and you deliver, work late, complain 10 days in a row. That has to stop. And the only way he or she would understand is when you stop delivering. So they might come to you at your desk, oh, you didn't do that? Say, no, I gave you some warning, we had this meeting, and this time I just couldn't do it. And I also told you I have a personal commitment. I cannot keep postponing my personal commitments forever. This has been ongoing for a long time now, and I just couldn't do it on time. And I've worked very hard, I've been very dedicated, but I couldn't do it. Now they will start to understand, instead of you slaving yourself off to always deliver. So this is very effective, but obviously it depends on where you work. And also the big warning is do not drop things on purpose. Do not on purpose be late on one task. Just do your best. This is always a recurring theme. Always do your best. And after, as long as you've done your best, it's like for perfectionism, you do your best and whatever happens, happens. A quick look at Brian Tracy is actually a time management expert, and I thought I should really maybe have a quick slide on him. I can, give you a honest opinion of what I like and what I like less with his work. We've already talked about Eat That Frog. So what I like is that he provides a series of quick tips, usually, and he backs them up with references to studies. But you listen to his 50 tips, there might be 2 or 3 that you really like and you implement them, and here you go. So for instance, give a time for calls to avoid playing telephone tag. I think this is a very good idea. Otherwise, I'll call you this afternoon. And, when you call, they're not here, and after you play telephone tag. But instead, 3:30, I'll call you then. Learn speed reading. This is an excellent idea. And actually, I think what's even a best idea is to learn speed writing or touch typing on your keyboard. I mean, the amount of time, there's nothing worse than seeing a staff very good, but it takes him 1 minute to write 3 lines. Do not learn from academics, he says. So let's assume he's not an academic. Don't learn from professors who do not have real life experience. What I like in his work as well is suggesting that you should see yourself as a business, an earning machine, as the way he calls it. It's like even when you're a full-time employee, don't see yourself as just someone who receives salary all the time. See yourself as a business that can take you to other places. You need to increase your value, you need to learn more, because after you're not going to be staying in this company forever. So I like this idea too. Now, what I like less, his work is more oriented towards the CEOs. For instance, do not respond to emails. That's something he had suggested. He gives the example of the CEO who goes away for 5 weeks after he's got all these emails. So what he did is he didn't respond to any of the emails. And this way people who really needed to talk to him, got in touch with him eventually. But try and do that at your work. I think this is not really realistic. He is also suggesting put a do not disturb in your office. I mean, most of us don't have offices. And also, same vein, work people out of your office when they come in. Do you have an office? No. But so it's often geared towards the CEOs or managers or executives. Another thing that I don't like And is they want you to work very hard. Honestly, come early, eat through lunch and work late to have 3 hours extra of quiet work during the day when there's no one in the office. Yeah, so he's really pushing on this. I've heard some of his work when he says, yeah, you have to work more than your manager, arrive before your manager, leave after your manager. I mean, good luck with that. I mean, this is not the way I like to work. I prefer to work smarter than harder. But if it's your thing, go for it. Now that's it. My quick overview on Brian Tracy. Well, thank you once again for considering this course. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully there are things that resonated with you and that you will keep using. But in any case, it's great that you have taken the step to have a look at your time management, that you are not just blaming others and you want to do something about it. If there was only one thing to keep out of this course, and hopefully it won't be just only one, is plan your task per day. Have a time-based scheduling. And this really worked wonders with my staff. If you have a question, don't hesitate to send me a message. I have plenty of time actually, so I'll be more than happy to respond to you or provide clarification. In any case, all the best to you. I don't want to keep you any longer than that. If you want to have a look at the bonus video, that'll be great as well. But in any case, all the best to you and your next step.